Is that my cue? Order. Start with pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Karen, roll call, please.
Mike.
Here.
Here. Doug.
Here.
Here.
All members present. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Doug, aye.
John, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. All right, a lot of participation today. This is awesome. Glad to see everybody here. As we typically do, well, before we get into the agenda, we've got an opportunity for anybody from the community to address the council. If you've got something you'd like to address the council with, that's not part of our agenda tonight, feel free to do so. Otherwise, the agenda items will take that input or that discussion. And we have any of the community members online, or is it just Charlie and us?
Looks like just Charlie.
Okay. So is there anybody who would like to address the council before we get into the agenda? All right, we will move on. First up is the consent agenda. And unless there's any discussion needed, we could take a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
John, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. So just that quickly, we get into the public hearing on the comprehensive plan and the Parks and Trails master plan. So this, let's see here. Now, this is a one and done public hearing, right, Karen?
Correct.
Thank you. This is a pretty exciting day. This comprehensive plan's been in the works for those that aren't directly plugged into it for what's got to be, it feels like it's been a year now from the time we got serious about making this commitment. And what it contains is intended to be the vision for where Peosta is going to be 30 years from now, generally speaking. So tremendous amount of resource investment, a tremendous amount of public engagement. And I'll speak for myself. I'm extraordinarily excited for what this is going to do for Peosta as we look at developing in a way that fits what the community wants going forward. So Charlie, I think you're on to maybe walk us through that. Is that what you're planning to do here?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I'm just here to answer questions. I can do a brief kind of narrative summary here. I know we presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council jointly a few weeks back, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission obviously a couple weeks ago. I will say, yes, it has been well over a year process now. We started in May of last year with the city and our local steering committee made up of folks from the community and region participating in the effort. In total, we had over 7, well, I should say we had 7 steering committee meetings throughout that time frame, 3 community webinars, which we had great participation in. 2 community open house events in gallery style where folks could come and check out boards of the plan and its progress. We held small group listening sessions with 7 different groups early in the process to identify issues and challenges. A community survey out with over 218 responses, over 170 open-ended comments during that as well. So a lot of community involvement really came into this, and it really turned out to be what we know the committee feels is a very community-minded, developed plan moving forward. Something that obviously Peosta has a current comprehensive plan, but was not necessarily tailored as much as it should be for the rapidly growing and changing conditions and markets that Peosta is facing. So with this plan, as Mayor mentioned, we're planning for the next 20 to 30 years and looking at planning for a population of around 5,000 people by 2045. So with that, you will see in the plan a growth scenario that pushes some growth land use items out past city limits as they are today. And then that is just planning for as those annexations occur, where new neighborhoods, new industrial growth, new trails and parks and those types of things should be logically placed in the future to make sure we have a community that's accessible, inclusive for all, with quality, high character neighborhoods and business centers. So it really is comprehensive in the sense that it touches every single aspect of the community as it grows, but also as it exists today, and preserving what is great about Peosta today, enhancing where necessary, but making sure that we're doing it in a cohesive and coordinated manner through our local boards, through the Planning and Zoning Commission, through the City Council, through the capital improvements plan as it's going forward. So with that, it is a it is a 100-page document or 100-page plus document, but that is necessary to cover everything in a comprehensive manner. And I'm happy to answer any questions. You council will see a memo was provided in the agenda packet related to one small change to the initial draft related to some transportation routes south of Highway 20, which was a comment the mayor had provided in the initial round of comments. So we did update that in the final draft. Nothing really consequential, just being more explicit on the connections of those streets and roads for the south area of Highway 20. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions or stick on and listen to any comments as well.
Before we get to the questions, I should officially open the public hearing. So we can, with the public hearing open, would anybody like to address the council related to the comprehensive plan? If I can ask, how many have seen it? Okay, 2, 3, 2.5. How many are aware that it even was happening? Okay, a couple more. It's good feedback. Thank you. All right, so hearing no questions.
Where can we see a copy of it? Probably on the website.
Yep. There's, you can go to the City of Peosta website, and I think the Peosta plan. Which one is it, Charlie? Peosta plan?
Yeah, so we have the website for the project here. Let me just double check to make sure it should still be live.
It's on board docs too, so if you go to the council agenda, board docs, you can find it as an attachment to this agenda.
And that is the project website is www.peostaplan.com. And that website will remain live for the foreseeable future. We usually leave that open for multiple years for your use. Obviously, you can transition that over or place the document on the city's website as well, but we will leave that that website live.
So, Doug, or Karen, I will ask, I'm looking at the city website. It's still the 2015 comprehensive plan. Pending approval.
Adopted.
Yeah, pending approval tonight.
Correct.
We'll get that out there, right? So the city website was a long way to get you a simple answer.
Well, I think the draft is all on the website.
Okay, I just see the one on that page. All right, we'll make sure that's easy to find. And yeah, we'd love the feedback you've got from it. Once if you do go out, take a look at it. Thanks. All right, hearing no public input, we could take a motion to close the public hearing.
Close public hearing.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
And I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. That being said, we can then immediately consider the resolution adopting the comprehensive plan and trails master plan.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution, adopt the comprehensive plan and parks and trails master plan.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
And I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. For as much as went into that, that seems like that should get a toast.
Well, if I can, Mayor and Council, I do just want to say a few words. at RDG, and I'll speak for our team, we're greatly appreciative of all the assistance, the excitement, the active participation of our committee throughout the process. We don't see that in these types of plans in every community we work in. It really is truly exciting to see where Peosta is headed. We look forward to hopefully being part of that as you continue to move along. But again, just thank you. I'm excited for the community and look forward to its progress.
Thank you, Charlie. And the same to you and the rest of your team at RDG. This has been, for all of us, I think this is new. Maybe some of us were through the last round, but it's been an eye-opening experience, and we really appreciate the professionalism, the knowledge, the expertise that RDG brought to truly lead us through the process and come up with something that really feels good, like it fits what Peosta needs. So thank you. All right, we will then move on to the public hearing related to the fiscal year 21 budget amendment. And for that, do you want to give that just a 2-sentence narrative?
Typically, and Karen will let her follow up if she wants to add anything, typically budget amendments take into account things that happened during the year that weren't anticipated when the budget was passed. Unexpected expenditures that may come up, sometimes unexpected revenues. Revenues you don't have to be so much worried about from an amendment standpoint, just on the expense side. From an auditor standpoint, the city gets audited regularly, and the auditors want you to amend your budget typically to show that you're going to spend the money before you spend it. Sometimes that isn't too workable in emergency situations, but the most common reasons for amendments are unexpected projects that come up during the year, expenditures, or projects that carry over from one year to the next. So you may budget project planning to finish in one fiscal year to carry us over to the next. Anything in the budget amendment that's being approved tonight is on the expense side would have been expense likely approved by the council at some point ahead of this. So it's just really making some changes to the budget document so it matches the actions taken by the council and the city up to this point.
And we kind of discussed this at the last meeting or work session, I don't remember which, but the biggest changes are due to the capital projects, the wastewater treatment facility project moving along at a greater clip than what we had expected or anticipated, and the Highway 20 lift station project. So those are the biggest changes.
Thank you, Doug. Karen? So with that understanding, we'll open the public hearing for the fiscal year 21 budget amendment. And anybody from the community who would like to address the council on the budget, now is a good time. Same opportunity for any of the community online.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
A second.
Yep, yes.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Your guy.
Mike, aye.
No public input, 5 motions, or 5 ayes, carries the motion. Close the public hearing. And we can then immediately consider the resolution approving the fiscal year 21 budget amendment.
Make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Your guy.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. On to the Public Works section. We've got the wastewater treatment facility change order number 3. And my screen stopped updating. There we go. So there are 4 changes within this change order request. One of them, adding the permanent piping, redirecting fluid back to the inner ring, modifying the metal coping, additional wood blocking for the roof panels, and Additional sampling of the lagoon sludge for cells numbers 2, 3, 5, and 6. I'm gonna suggest that this may be best to work through these one by one, and we can take them in the order presented. So let's talk about the first change order here, adding the permanent piping, redirecting fluid to the inner ring. We understand that is a typical thing that would be done. It was not included in the original plan, not for any deliberate reason. Am I paraphrasing this correctly, Eldon? Yep. So this is considered to be something that we would otherwise want to do. So we need to make a decision if we're going to accept the change order to modify that accordingly. Any discussion from the council on that?
Something that needs to get done, right? In order for it to work correctly. So,
Okay, and then I think there is I will bring into the conversation at least the direct cost versus the premium for change, but I think we can do that after we get through, since that carries over more than just the one. Second one's a metal coping on the roof, changing a design detail. That's a $4,000 deduct. Any discussion needed on that one?
That's tied to maybe the next change order too, I think, isn't it, Dean?
yes.
Yeah, there's a deduct to kind of change that plan, and then there's an add-on to go with a different plan.
Thank you for the clarification.
Each other.
So we've got the wood blocking then that goes on the precast roof panels. And that's the 5,000 back in.
I thought that's two separate issues. Blocking was an oversight by the, yeah.
Okay. It's two separate things.
Separate but related, maybe Alder, can you explain that?
Yeah, I can explain that. So the first one, the open detail, well, it's easier to say. The third one is the wood blocking with the connection of the insulation to the actual roof panels. So there's tapered insulation of the panels. Above the roof panel, there's tapered insulation. At the edge of that blocking to tie in into the roofing membrane. So that wood blocking line work was a bit hard. So what was showing plans to have to bring that in. The other part of it is where we show that membrane coming up on the parapet. We show that there would be metal working that would extend down the wall and tie into that membrane on the flat portion of it. But the contractor came back and helped with the cost of the wood, and that they went up and stretched the membrane over the top of the parapet. It's kind of a more critical detail that they would do. And then they just install the metal coping on the top and sit it down and set it all over. That's what they correct.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. And then, so let's, with those three, the coping detail, the additional wood blocking, and the change to the plumbing. Dean, what's your recommendation to the council on those so far?
So I'm in approval in agreement to all of the change orders. I guess I'd ask for your approval. My question to the rerouting or to the RAS piping would be the increase in cost by the contractor for the preparation of the change order. The markup basically of the change order.
So
I feel that with IAW representing the city, that should be a cost related back to their firm in regards to faulting the thing.
So you're recommending that the council approve the change order, all the elements in the change order, and that the city would then follow up with IIW to recover the premium associated with or that resulted from this being added now as opposed to being part of the original plan.
Correct.
Is there a reason it was added now versus the original plan?
What's that?
Is there a reason that it was added now versus added to the original
As
plan?
we were reviewing, the shop drawings that came through, there was a question that came back from the contract about he uses some alternate ways to connect the piping up. And at that time, I just noticed that section of pipe had been not included. And so I brought it to the city's attention. It's not something that is overcomable if it's not installed, but it makes life a lot easier 10, 15 years down the road. Because what it allows is rather than having to bring in a temporary pump and transfer water from one cell to the other, there's piping in place that basically to turn the two valves and locally redirect rather than trying to water something, like connect something up, potentially go into that channel where there's still water. It's more of an operation and maintenance helper than anything else. So that we're not trying to do in 15 years, trying to remember these are the steps you have to take. And bring in, if you want to do this activity, you have to arrange to bring in a temporary pump or a special heading. It's just turn and go.
So I guess, why wasn't it designed that way originally?
Just forgot to include that particular line in there. I should have included it. I would have otherwise included it, I should say.
So if we follow that logic on number 2, the metal coating, taking that change, it's a $4,000 cost down. Does the contract not provide for that same premium on the cost reductions?
What's that?
Our contract doesn't provide the same premium on cost reductions.
So we can look at that. Typically on a subcontractor change, we allow up to a 5% markup for the contractor, the direct contractor. If you want me to go back and look, I didn't look at that one on deducts on whether or not they have to pass that percentage on to you guys or not.
Okay. And then the wood blocking, if I use the same question that Don had, that's something that we would typically have in the original plan. Well, you did have it in the original plan, as I understand.
That would have been a needed item to install. So that the detail should have shown that wood block was omitted necessary for the project.
So for those ones where the additional premium is on, Dania, that's your request to the council, a recommendation, so that we approve them, but look to Origin, if I use the correct company name now.
Sorry, I failed to that as well.
To reimburse the city for the premium associated with those changes. Council?
I guess my question would be, Eldon, you said your firm allows up to a 5%.
No, your contract allows the contractor direct work to include 15% overhead profit associated with the materials, equipment, and labor associated with the change order. That number is reduced to 5% if the subcontractor's performance. Contractor has the ability to incur 10% overhead profit for the work that they have by change order. So basically, we don't allow the contractor to directly charge you for project administration or other work associated with it, asking for a change order, getting you the fee, and then changing anything associated with bonding or insurance or anything that's a direct result of the change. So that's how you build that in, is you allow them to take that profit, otherwise they would build that in at the bid in the first place. So in the contract, there's a set number that is explicitly stated in there, to be used.
So there isn't necessarily a fee tied to the fact that it's a change order. If these have been included in the original bid, the argument is that they would have built that overhead and profit number into the original bid. So in theory, it should be the same, whether it was in the original change order or not. I'm sorry, in the original contract or not. And one thing that, at least my understanding, I'll say it's maybe unique in my experience, maybe not. In determining the right numbers to put on these change orders, obviously the contractor is submitting information, Eldon's looking at it and signing off. This contract doesn't, to my understanding, have line items or unit pricing, if you will, in the bid. So it's not that, you know, the contract says, we're not going to do this. We can't go back to the bid and say, well, that was so much a linear foot or so much of this or so much of that, so we can take that off. So there has to be, as I understand it, this is all subject really to the contractor making their pitch to the engineer, and the engineer saying, yes, I agree that that's a reasonable number, a reasonable approach. And then the engineer signs off. Like, correct on what I've been saying?
Yep. That'd be great.
So.
If I can use this as an example, on the first change, the plumbing change, the detail in here shows what I'm going to call, well, I guess I don't need to call it. Yeah, I do.
Contractor's markup.
So the direct cost, the labor and material associated with it is 81,3507. Then there's the contractor's markup of 10%. And Doug, is it your point that that 10% is the equivalent to the overhead or the margin that would be built into the contract if it had been quoted originally, with this originally included?
That's what the contractor would tell you, correct? And that's not unusual. Anytime and when there's a change order, there's usually, this is what it costs, and then we get some profit on that, because the whole idea of doing the work is percentage of profit on the overall work. Again, and when I use the word unique, it's unique to me. In this case, it's just unique that there is no bid document to go back to determine what the appropriate added costs are. You know, for example, even the $95 labor rate, you know, there's probably nothing we can go back and look at. It's just, you know, up to Eldon largely to look at this and say, yes, I agree that they aren't taking advantage of the city, aren't proposing too much for the work that's being done, because at the bottom line of this, he'll sign off saying that he believes these are appropriate. So, but yeah, I don't look at that fee as a, well, change order, therefore we're going to charge you more. We don't know if they technically are or not, but typically that would be built in as that, you know.
I kind of feel like we're getting backdoored here by something. I mean, here's a lump sum, this is what it's gonna be, and we have no way to separate anything out. If we're getting overcharged or not.
So the other cost increment in here is there's the 10% contractor's markup of 813 and change. Then there's the 5% overhead and profit for this subcontractor of 447. Yeah.
That's for the general contractor. The extra 5% is for Fordson, 10% is for their subcontractor.
Okay. It just says subcontractor. I wasn't able to find that.
It's whoever in there.
Okay, thank you.
So they do the plumbing and they're the general. That allows them to mark it up 15%.
Yeah, and if they were self-performing, it would have been 50%.
But they are self-performing.
Well, the DPH is a division of Fortson, it's not Fortson. So what they're saying is DPH gets 10%, Fortson gets 5%. If Fortson were to self-perform, they would just take 15%.
But in all reality, they are self-performing.
So what's that?
In all reality, they are self-performing.
Yeah, right, the percentage is the same regardless of how.
Looking at the first change order, well, maybe not the first one, the provide bypass line on the RAS return line. You know, they've got 32 hours at $95, the material cost of $5,095. Do we do anything? We do anything to verify that, those numbers? Do we require invoices on the materials? And is there any oversight on the labor? Or is there any way we could do this more in time and materials? We want it to be done. But instead of just agreeing to 32 hours times $95, some monitoring of it, maybe it takes them 12 hours. You know. And again, on the materials, are we confident that that's actually the material cost, or will we require them to turn something in to show that?
We could definitely ask them to do a time and materials. There's obviously going to be a overhead cost associated with monitoring that activity to make sure that they're billing it to the right number. So there's that. And, you know, there's other things when we start to talk about a time and materials that are probably not included in this as well. It just has to do with like their use of decoring equipment or anything else. I mean, it's a function of just watching it and making sure that they will not cost to every time and material line item at that point.
I don't disagree with some of that either. Eldon, and you're familiar with how the project is, or Dean, based on what they're doing here, I mean, does it look like 32 hours worth of work? Is there anything in the project documents or the bid documents that suggest $95 is the right rate for this kind of work?
I mean, their rate sheets are for what they bill out at. So I mean, if you'd like to maybe get a rate sheet from you, call me and their laborers, we can definitely call that back.
Yeah, I didn't know.
As for whether or not I think it's a reasonable number of hours, yeah, I think you guys a day and a half to make sure that this pipe is put in, the valves are put in, the associated pipe supports, the associated valve actuators that run from the submerged condition up, that they've got mounted into the wall, they've got a core hole. They've got to get that pipe thrown in there. I just see if the day and a half for the two laborers will take, yes.
I feel more comfortable with the quote that they're given in relation to the hours and their established man dollars versus going time and material. Because then they could very easily put 4 guys on the project. You know, still take them 32 hours. You know, consider going time and material is on tracking. Sure.
So I think I'm hearing a general understanding, and maybe it's even acceptance that the 32 and the 95 may be in the right ballpark. The additional 10% and 5% as they show up in this math, the additional 10 and 5. I'm also hearing that that's not necessarily all additive solely due to the fact that it's a change, but that those elements, or at least a portion of them, would have also been accounted for had this been put into the original bid document in the form of additional markup for overheads and profit. So that being said, it's actually good to dig into. Dean, does that affect what your recommendation is to the council?
My voice of opinion stands. I don't feel there's a reason for the 15 markup.
Okay.
as far as preparation on the original bid, in all reality, was to say how much they allowed themselves as far as cost. You know, they're obviously aggressive toward the project because they obviously wanted it. Therefore, I don't feel that 15% would be figured in.
Sorry, your last sentence again, I didn't.
I don't feel that the 15% would have been figured in one particular item like that.
I agree with Dean. Maybe going forward, we can have either Doug or the new administrator put together a document. So when we go out for bids for big projects like this, we can hand it to them and say, these are our rules. We need everything split out because we don't know what we're getting charged per line item per product. You go build a house or something, they say this is how much plywood is, this is how much plumbing's gonna be, this is how much your drywall's gonna be. We get a thrown lump sum, here you go. So they can say whatever they want to say. It says, yeah, we would have had this 15% on at the beginning, but we don't know.
I mean, at this point, we have nothing indicating that they don't have the materials already marked up to take that into account to the time that they put toward the change order.
Yeah, so I will say too, a part of this is, these are the CORs that we've received directly and also asked for the backup information because we do need that for the EDA. So that, a lot of this information is already on ask, it's just hasn't been delivered yet at this point. They've sent this to us, taking it at face value that these are the actual numbers, and they know they have to deliver the actual invoice type numbers to us and be able to be approved for the financing. So they're aware of that. So they're not, I guess there's not really a lot of ways to mix the numbers on things that are actually. So, but I mean, as far as like the rates are around that rate sheet. So that's what they charge for a waiver.
Okay.
One thing, and I'm not casting blame on you folks for not seeing it or anybody for not sharing it with you specifically, but based on what I'm hearing from Eldon too, when the contract got approved, it included language somewhere deep in the provisions that if there are change orders, that there are these allowable charges for over profit, basically, as Eldon's been explaining, and I would say that's generally typical. And I'd agree with, in this project, I agree with Doug and Dean too. If these items had been included in the original bid, and they wanted the project, they maybe wouldn't have built, they probably wouldn't be the exact same amount of money, because now that they have the project, it's easier to get full bore, if you will, where they might have reduced it in an effort to get the project. But it's also not unusual to have change orders on a project of this size and scope either. It's just, in the end, you hire the engineer for a purpose, and one of those purposes is to oversee the project and to oversee change orders, and it's part of Dean's job too, so that's good input from both sides.
So the contract says they can and are able to do that, correct?
I haven't read it, but based on what Eldon's telling me, that language is in there.
Yeah, so there's a number of general conditions and supplementary conditions that deal with what's allowable for requesting change orders and then those set rates. And the purpose of the set rates is to establish a number so that you're not negotiating it right now. It's not, and to change them, to penalize them, not really necessarily.
All the contracts I've been involved with too, there's never been change orders where there's the contractor marks up 15%. Now, if we wanted to change something physically, do something different, then the contract it says they have the right to mark it up 10 to 15%. So that kind of struck me kind of odd how they would have that in there, but It is.
I will briefly just touch on the last one in there too, the bagging the sludge. I think that's based off of a previous conversation that we had in the workshop about the lagoon sludge. Dean, your recommendation for that, the additional sampling?
So yes, they went forward with the additional sampling. I sent out an email to everybody in regards to it. So I did give them the approval to do the additional sampling. My theory behind it is they're asking for an extension for the disposal of it. In regards to the fact that they're only allowed to dispose of possibly up to 4 loads a day. They're saying that it's probably not gonna be acceptable to accomplish that. Possibly, depending, if they can't get those 4 loads delivered a day for the reason that the landfill may have too much garbage of any other sort coming in, or weather conditions or whatever that may be. So they're asking for an extension as far as the disposal. So my recommendation was to go forward with the additional sampling and possibly look into land application on a portion of the sludge. To overcome some of that extended time that they're looking for.
So we would divert some of the sludge to land application instead of landfill.
Absolutely.
Speed up the project. May or may not have a cost impact to make somewhat negligible.
Correct. And that'd be negotiable with the contractor.
And arguably an environmental plus, since it's not going to landfill. Okay, so council, we've got the change order in front of us for a total of $14,303.91.
What if we approve this change order now with COVID or whatever they call it to discuss the wages later, or the 15% later? Because there's so many things this year that are uncertain. This could go back. And maybe if we address it all at the end, that'd be a good idea or not. Or we got too much.
It's in our contract.
Much
we
yeah,
can
that's
do.
what I'm struggling with. What do we do? It's in the contract.
Is
I don't think the contractor wages are negotiable. I don't think. I would assume that they.
But I'm just saying, if it's all in the contract that they can get the 15% and the wages are the wages, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
So I think there's nothing but to do.
I don't think we can negotiate on their wages.
No, I don't think they want to. It comes down to, do you want this pipe in there?
Correct.
If it makes sense to do it now when they're building it. So,
It's 3.6% of the whole project.
yeah, if you're talking 14,000.
4%.
Over
Not
$7.5
even,
million project.
Right. I mean, it's maybe step back at that.
They're 14.
For this time.
I know. Well, that's adding the both times, 14 and 13. Right.
I'll make a motion for contract order, change order number 3.
I didn't hear you.
I'll
Sorry,
make a
Jerry.
motion to pay contract change order number 3 for $14,303.91.
We've got a motion.
I'll second it.
Doug, aye.
And I,
Okay.
Motion carries with 5.
One note that I might want to put is maybe we verify in fact that is in the contract with 15%.
That's a good ask. That's a good ask.
And any contract going forward, we need to reevaluate that.
Yeah. Right.
So element that get you off guard here, maybe it's in here, what the total change orders to date, including this change order, are they here somewhere?
Uh, Yeah, that'd be
School.
the increase in,
One and two.
the increase in previous was $13,549.36.
So 27, 70 to 27.9 is 3.6.
Thank you.
Just about 28,000 on foul. I believe we're just around $1 million paid out of the contract so far.
Was there a contingency built into this project?
That's what I wondered. Yeah, I mean, there's contingency built into the actual ask on the loan application.
Yeah. Just, yeah, so
None
change orders.
of that is formalized until the end of the project.
All right. So that covers the wastewater treatment facility change order number 3. Next up is the stormwater management ordinance. Doug, I see you've added quite a bit of narrative to this,
Well, Karen maybe did most of that,
or Karen did.
right?
That's from the last time.
Oh, from the last time, sorry. That was from the prior meeting. I added tonight just a note that, at least at City Hall, we haven't received any negative comments or comments at all about the stormwater management ordinance. With as much development is going, this is currently always ongoing. The sooner this gets passed, probably the better. So in light of the fact that there's been no comments or objections, I just ask that you consider waiving the requirement for 3 separate readings and move towards final passage tonight.
So we had our first reading on April 27th.
So do we need a second and then waive the third?
You could do it different ways. It's kind of like running a meeting, how official you want to be by Robert's Rules of Order. But I would say the way I think I've seen you guys do it, you'd have a motion to waive the requirement for 3 separate meetings. And that could be moved and seconded. If that gets approved, then a motion to approve final passage. But is that consistent with how you normally do it?
That would be what they could do if they approve the second, waive the third, they could, however they want to do it.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of the storm management ordinance.
Okay.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5.
I'll make a motion to waive the third reading.
Second that. Okay.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5.
Then we needed a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt the stormwater ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. All right, now this one will get a little bit more of our audience interaction. Next item up is the Greenwood multi-residential utility billing metering. But points, good time to address the council. We've got several speaking, so if you would please, for the council, just state your name, your address, and then what you'd like the council to hear.
Okay, my name is Sherry England, and I'm here in Driver Group. I own some condominiums in Peosta that are there now. I own 5 on Peosta Street.
Jeff Spawn, managing partner for this acquisition, 18 units in Peosta.
Greg Rouse, we got units there on Birch Road.
Fantastic.
And I have 19 units over here in Peosta.
So Sherry, Karen, Jeff, Richard, thank you, and Greg. Okay, so what would you like the council to consider?
First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk. We of course represent some of the people that we are tenants, landlords of properties in Peosta. And hopefully with your new master plan, you're going to be welcome with more people. I know that I'm a realtor, so I do see that there's going to be some plans that's going to be small family. Myself, we started building ours in 2008, and since then, we connect to the city. We put in separate meters for every unit. And, but then we were told that we had to pay for all of the water bills. They had to be taken out of our account, and we were responsible for collecting that. Of course, when we started, it was smaller, and now, you know, with 19 units, I have a pack of a few months of the water bills that I received. And all of us, what we would like to ask the council is if the city, since you own your own utility, if you would allow us to, that we could send the bill separately to the tenants. They are all billed separately, in each one of us. We would like tenants to be responsible. You know, some of the cities, and Karen has some information, that some of the cities do collect a deposit. Because of course, when a tenant leaves, you're paid in arrears. And so, you know, that deposit would take care of that last payment. My husband and I built the apartment building in Farley, and that's what they came up with. They came up with a deposit, and then, you know, ultimately, in the end, you know, they always had a deposit to take care of it. So that's what we asked. Because even when we have new people that are coming in to build rental properties, the majority of them would think that the city owning their own utility would take care of the funds. Yes, so that's what we're asking.
The typical thing is like, well, mine are direct deposit, so go back and all nine, I built mine, water bills was about $40 a month, and now they're 60 to 100. You know, any other product running into, so I included it in my rent, so as water bills keep going up, there it does. And I do keep changing that year to year, month to month, you know, makes it much different. I have some in Epworth apartments, I have some in Fireman also. This is the only place I have to pay it.
And I checked with Epworth, Farley, and Dyersville, and tenants who put the water in their name, and they pay $150 deposit. And then that's their responsibility to pay their own water bills. I also have 6 townhouses in Dubuque, and Dubuque puts the tenants who put their water in their name. However, Dubuque does not charge a deposit. I personally think it's a good idea to charge that deposit. I don't know if other utilities like Black Hills Energy or Reliant charge deposits, but at least in the city has some bill tenant leaves. I also, with my tenants in my properties in Dubuque, if I do have a tenant that is late on a water bill, paying their water bill, I get a notice. And the first thing I do is not until that tenant pays that paid. Because I'm not pay your water bill, if it gets shut off, you have to move. So that's how I take care of that. And I also find that the tenant is paying their own water bill and not as wasteful.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, they don't, you know, they just aren't as wasteful. I've had water bills that are very high or low. I mean, I've had one family tenants whose water bill runs way more than somebody that's had 3 people living there. So, you know, here again, works that it's hard to estimate that when somebody's moving in to include that in the rent, you know, to know what your final amount of rent is going to be at the end of the month, and what you're going to net at the end of the year based on a high water bill, varying water bills.
I run it into where there's one other something, they don't tell you that you can get a bill that's $150 or $200. You don't know, or if they're paying it, people pay closer attention to it.
It's difficult to call a tenant every month and say, why'd your water bill go up $25? You know, I mean, you trust that a tenant's going to call you if they have a plumbing issue, but we don't always do that.
Another issue is as landlords get left holding the bag, and we lose out on profit because we're taking it out of our tenant's deposit that's supposed to cover the damages that we have in an apartment. So now we've got somebody who hasn't been paying their water bill for a few months, it might be $200. We have to eat that. And we have no recourse because we only have a $600 deposit that we can tie into to replace the carpet, patch holes in the walls, put lines in.
One thing that I noticed is that, so when we lease out a unit, we're leasing it out before we really know the water was actually set. You know, we can try to average, I mean, with 19, there's no possible way that I can collect 19 different water bills and keep them separate. So even if we average it, I mean, I've got just one tenant that ranged from $100 to $150. We're locked into that lease for that year, so I know that the city has gone up, I think that when I got a letter that you've gone up the last few years about 30% on water bills. So, you know, when we have those leases, we can't, you know, we have to wait for that year, whereas if they do have their own water bills, they're responsible for paying. And the waste truly is quite a bit of difference. If they were paying.
We have that, we have 36 units that we pay the water bill on. And we will get no phone calls. Oh, yeah, my phone is for 4 months. Well, when you have 24 units on the water bill, that doesn't show up as an appreciable amount. The city notifies you if you allegedly have a leak, but when you have 24 units on 1 meter, every day is a leak, because the meter's always running. So you can't rely on that either. We can't with individual meters here. But yeah, that's the only reason we pay in review is because we have 1 meter, that's how the bill is built. So I got a 3 meter every unit.
That's why we're here to see, because in the future, I think we'll be able to see if we got too, as far as the new people that are coming in, that's going to be in some other properties. The other thing in most places, a lot of those people know that most of us.
You could look at it kind of greedy thing too, because people pay their own, don't waste as much. And as more of the town grows, the more it's gonna get wasted.
So is it more of a organizational issue, meaning keeping track of which tenants use how much? Or is it more of the left holding if someone doesn't pay?
It's both. We have, it's an administrative cost on our side that we're incurring that the city is imposing on us. We're not your collection agent. You guys have your own water system. You should be collecting your own money or come up with a compensation plan for us. Hey, we'll give you 10% every bill. The other side is we do get left over back, and we want to come up with a tenant where I say, okay, you need a $700 deposit, by the way, I need another $150 for. I need to take it to the city. Now I put that in an escrow account, and you can come audit me because that's your water system, and I have a whole other escrow system.
Did the city say you had to put the water meters in, or did you guys just go ahead and do it yourselves? You know,
It was there when we bought our bill. They were there.
No, guess I don't.
Tell you, when I built my building on Peosta Street, I didn't actually know until after the fact that it was going to be my responsibility to pay that. However, I didn't, when I got into rental property, that was one of the things that I looked at in Dubuque, is that I wanted something with separate utility because of what I already knew of other landlords and the costs and the loss that they incur on their net return on their buildings. You know, it is an income property, and to make it worthwhile, you have to know what your bottom line is going to be. And when you have these unexpected costs, because like Sherry said, you know, you set your rent based on what you hope their water bill will be, and then it ends up changing, it changes your final net return. You know, it'd be a lot easier to just put my money in the stock market and not worry about, well, maybe not worry about, you know, well, maybe it is, you know, or to have some other, you know, income that you know what the bottom line is going to be. That there's just too many gray areas when you have to worry about these utilities. And there again, that's why when I set out to be a landlord, I made sure that I had separate out of view and build in Peosta. And so, but yeah, so I have separate water meters, obviously, hoping to change this billing situation tonight.
So each one of your tenants, they all have different power? They all sign up for their own
They all
power?
they all pay for their own power, they're all responsible for their gas.
And the water's.
So this is, you know, we feel that this is utilities, their water utility, that they should be responsible. And they each get a separate bill, they're each separately metered, so they each do get. But, you know,
It's the tenant's name on the actual bill?
no, it's.
They're all to you.
It's by unit, by unit.
So the
But
Peosta
the
code,
difference is that we can't, you know, even if I average it and I put it in my rent, I, you know, with this 30% increase in the last few years, when we have, you know, when we have that set lease that year and it increases, we can't, you know, we can't recoup that until the following year, we're gonna increase it. And then there's different, you know, they're all different because there might be a family of 5 and one and a family of 2, so how do you vary that? That's why we wanted them separate. I never knew myself when we started building the Piazza, I never knew. I've never been in a city and I've probably had, you know, I'm probably in 8 different cities and every tenant paid their water bill.
Do you guys all have similar lease agreements as far as length of time the lease is for?
Ours are a year and then month to month after that. However, I've had tenants in Dubuque that rented from me for 20 years, and I don't necessarily raise their rent every year, you know, and even when the tenants came into my units in Peosta, and I know every landlord probably does things differently, but they come into my unit with budget in mind, and yes, I eventually will bump rents up gradually every 2, 3, 4 years. But I don't want to have to do that the first year they're just barely settled in there and then have to raise that rent because of the uncertainties of the water, where if they're responsible for that, then it's something they're buying and it's something that they're to be responsible and mindful of their usage. You know, just like paying their electric bill, they're not going to keep it at 60 electric bill and think, maybe I better watch how I'm spending those utilities.
I know as a fact that if they paid their own utilities, I wouldn't have bills varying from $90 to $150 for one tenant. It wouldn't happen.
Let's say a few things. It's legal the way the city's doing it. It's probably more common that tenants do get their name on the account and get the bill sent to them. I think that's probably the more common practice in communities.
sounds like we're being told
Yeah.
North Farley, Dyersville all do it that way as well.
Yep, I think that's more common. The school of thought, sometimes you can look at too, and this gets to getting stuck holding the bag, and I've been a landlord myself, so I know the pain. Gets back to the idea that, you know, you are the landlord, you're in it for, make some income, and you choose those tenants. And if they don't follow through, you didn't choose carefully enough or whatever. I mean, that's the argument that it's an income property and there's risks with that. When it comes to notices, Iowa code, notices and deposits. A lot of cities charge a deposit to every account holder, not just tenants. Every single account holder pays a deposit. Some cities, if you're current on your bill for 3 years, you get your deposit back. And that 3 years might change from city to city, but some number. Monticello, where I'm most familiar, you pay a deposit, you never get it back until you close that account. It sits there, it's $50. Rental properties, for the landlord to get off the hook, if you will, to potentially be stuck, the city would have to charge a deposit equal to the 3 months, 3 months times average usage, whatever that might be. So let's say, and I've never directly been involved in that calculation, but let's say there's a history on an apartment, it's usually $100. The deposit would then need to be $300 for that tenant. The city would collect and keep that deposit, and if that tenant took off, left town, didn't pay their final bills, and let's say the final bill came to 380, the city would apply the 300, and the city would be stuck with the 80, the landlord would be off the hook. If the final bill came to 250 and we had an extra $50, then we would try to get that back to that tenant wherever they may be. But for the landlord to get off the hook, they need to specifically make that request to the city. We want you to charge a deposit consistent with this code section. You know, in my experience on that, and you guys sound like you might be okay with it, my experience with landlords was they, one, didn't want to be stuck holding the bag, but yet they didn't want you to charge that big a deposit either because it's hard for the tenant to come up with that money. But it's kind of, you know, a decision that needs to be made. And we even had landlords at times where the tenant would move in and pay the $50 deposit because they could afford it. And the landlord would charge a little bit more rent for the first 2 or 3 months to build up the amount necessary to make for that bigger deposit, and then go in and pay the bigger deposit. And then the landlord's off the hook. But if you have other questions for me, I may be getting off the point a bit, but generally speaking, I would say what they're saying is accurate, that most cities do allow water accounts, utility accounts to be in the tenant's name.
I just think it's kind of odd how there's water meters there. We're charging the people that own the facilities, instead of residents, especially when the power company's charging the tenant, cable company's charging the tenant, gas is charged to the tenant, and here we are charging the owner of the property.
I think, yeah, there will be more, and I typed a little additional information in the packet. You know, if the council would make a switch, obviously there's going to be more obligations on staff at City Hall to take care of that. You know, you got to get all those deposit cards figured out, collect the deposits, determine the amount of the deposit, keep track of which landlords want notice of delinquencies because they've submitted a letter, which ones haven't. When the tenant leaves town and doesn't pay, you know, was it the bigger deposit, the smaller deposit? So do we go after the landlord for the balance, or do we not go after the landlord for the balance? One other thing we always did in Monticello, when we had when a landlord did get stuck and they paid it, we would still, let's say it was $150, we would take that $150 and assess it, or file paperwork with the Iowa offset program and try to still collect it from that tenant. And if we collected it, then we'd pay the landlord back. But again, that all takes time and work
And
by
that's
city
also
staff.
requires the tenants to give us social security numbers when they sign up for,
Yes, it does. Yep.
sign up. We can do that. If they move out of state, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, so there's no guarantees there, but that is, you know, something that,
It would be similar to like a line in Blackville and what they do when the tenant calls those utilities as well. right?
yeah, and I think with gas and electric, if it's a newer customer that they don't have experience with, they do charge a deposit, and if you stay current long enough, they get back to you. Other utilities don't get they don't get a hook the landlord, only cities. So I don't know how the cities got lucky there. If the tenant doesn't pay their electric or their gas, the utility company's out until that tenant needs utilities from them again. But as far as going after the property owner, that's only allowable under a city municipal account.
So what you're saying is the city will never get on the property.
Well, the city, if this, I'm not sure I heard your question right, but if the landlord says, we want you to charge a bigger deposit based upon 3 months of average usage, then you're off the hook.
I'm saying if the tenant wouldn't pay it, might skip town. Does it go back to your assess your taxes in and then the landowner pays it?
No, if you've had that larger deposit, the tenant doesn't pay and they leave town, the city could put it on Iowa offset, this program through the state of Iowa, if we had the social security number. And then if they were owed money for an income tax refund through the state, we could potentially grab that. If they win enough money at a casino, then, that it gets held, we could get that, and those things happen. But it wouldn't go as a lien against the property. Now, if the deposit was small, not equal to that 3 months, and we go to the landlord and the landlord refuses to pay, then we would put it to the county treasurer to be a lien on the property.
You guys all know your rates, kind of average. Would 3 months be too much for a deposit?
Well, back in '08, you could easily figure that it was gonna be under $50. Now, most of my tenants, with one person in an apartment, their average bill is $78.
With the exception of 1 week,
The,
which we saw.
one thing that I see is that this is going to be something that you have to think about moving forward, when you want more people coming into the town to put up more rentals. Because that's gonna deter, especially if somebody, 6, 12 plexes and, that they're all of a sudden they find out that they have to flex. Because I didn't know, we did the separate utility, then I didn't know that until after the fact, that we had to collect the flex. So, which we've done, but because of the variations and the differences of the water bills now, and how much larger they are, it's becoming more complicated for all of us. And it'll be complicated for the people that are coming into town.
I think the benefit you guys have is you're the big name of the city. Every city utility, they're the bad guy because they charge a deposit. But we're the landlord, we see these people constantly going to the building. That could give, it's not necessarily, the city's not necessarily, I would say, get a bad reputation because you have to pay a deposit because you're a utility. But if we have to charge, oh, by the way, our apartments over here, yeah, we charge an extra $150 for water. That's gonna get around that our buildings charge an extra $150, I can see the city can easily be the biggest bad guy.
Because they
On
don't.
your units, are there individual shut-offs outside that we can have access to? If a tenant does not pay?
We provide a master key, that we can give you a master key, everything's keyed on one key. So you can get in and you can walk in anytime as long as it's an emergency. Hey, we're coming in.
Right, but if we shut it off
In
their,
unit.
within their unit,
And they turn it back on.
they can turn it back on. So,
Probably easy enough to put a lock that's master key to that key. And you can put a lock on it, bam, it's padlock shut, just like the gas company does. They can go outside and they can go outside and cut that lock to Black Hills gas line and turn the gas back on.
right on the outside.
Right.
Exterior of the building.
Inside or outside, we lock it. If they want to turn it on, they're gonna turn it on, right? And then you take the meter out too, and then you say, well, what if they take the tap off the line, cut the lock, well, what if they do the gas? And it's. But
Yeah, but the chances of them having a key to turn it off from the outside on a key that's gotta be 5 foot deep, or 5 foot length.
No, I'm saying we put a padlock, key padlock that works on our master lock. That's how our padlocks work. We have one key that fits every padlock, every door, in all of our buildings.
No,
It's a master key.
he's talking different. You guys are talking in the building, I think you're talking actual
We're
hookup
talking a key outside the building.
in the ground.
No, I'm talking exterior curb,
Yeah. How many lines do you have coming to your building?
just like an individual residential house would have.
One line coming to that building. One line.
So he's talking about,
Greg's are individual, but yours are all.
Ours is all one.
That's what I'm asking throughout though, I wonder how the installation is of,
That's no different than a house, any house you got.
Yeah, 12.
right, yeah, I know you got 4 of them right by the sidewalk.
I think minor, my one building was possibly 1 or 2, but they're all individual.
Because the problem is, if we want to shut a tenant off, and we go to the curb stop and turn it, and it
Shut
turns
them all off.
4 people or 8 people off, it might put some pressure on that tenant.
Most of us have Airbnb buildings, so, I don't foresee it to be a large issue as far as water bills, I really don't. And I know that all of us, if we know that you're having an issue, notify us, I know that, we would, take efforts to try to get
You need to pay your water bill, and, I've got some great tenants. I mean, you never know, you can always get a bad apple, but, you know, my tenants all pay their rent on time, and I never got a notice from the other utilities that, hey, haven't paid their electric bill. Like I said, that doesn't guarantee anything. You know, you just never know where you're gonna have a bad apple that's not gonna pay their bills, but then they're not gonna rent from me anymore, because if they're not paying their water bill, they're probably behind in the rent too, so.
I think, you know, that I get noticed if like somebody behind me,
We get phone calls.
we didn't notice.
I'm gonna say, would we be willing, in your question, our water comes in from a main down the basement, branches out, goes to each meter. We'd be willing to put the house with padlock locks on, that you guys can install your own lock, just so you dangle or have, you know, your own padlock. That way we could insert it on it. Because that's the way it's a notice law, we have to confirm that. But we think that's a good law, that might be where it's going.
So as-
Easy.
As far as how we got to where we are, if I'm reading this correctly, Karen, this original ordinance that says that clearly states utility system charges for residential rental properties shall be paid by the owner, was passed in September of 2003.
Correct.
So back at that time, I think the proportion of rental properties in Peosta was probably significantly less than it is now. Whereas other communities have either adapted or have started with a different kind of policy. That policy seems to work well for the landlords. And what we've got is now driving an inordinate amount of work for the landlords without really creating any additional value. So I will, it seems like maybe the right next step for us would be to ask the staff to consult with the other communities and come back to the council with a proposal of how we, you know, what it would look like if we were to build a tenant.
I got a suggestion. Why don't we have a couple council members and Dean meet with the group and see how we could work it out?
I think we have to have staff, city hall staff involved in that conversation too, because the brunt of the work is gonna fall on city hall. I will comment that I've been at several meetings where, you know, with other clerks and they're like, oh, you don't have to collect from tenants, you know, and I have distributed our ordinance to several people. So I understand where you're saying, where you guys are coming from too. I don't wanna, you know, just not have the conversation and stuff like that, but it is definitely going to be a constraint on staff.
Do we look at penalties?
But if,
What's that?
Look into penalties, see what other cities have for penalties for late fees. and
We-
stuff like that on top.
We're pretty similar. We're pretty close on those fees. The issue becomes, we could have 2 months or possibly 3 months, you know, delayed receipt, which would be why you'd have to collect that extra. We're gonna have additional lockup requirements for social security numbers. Our red flag policy will go into place. Currently, we don't collect social security numbers on anybody. But I guess those are things the council needs to discuss, but I want city hall staff involved in the conversation.
that's fine, but I prefer a couple council people, Dean being involved in that too, because I don't want it to be lopsided one way or the other.
I think,
That's fine.
I think what we can do is maybe at a work session, let's talk this through, because there's so many different angles we gotta remember. We gotta think of as far as deposits, yes, no, deposits. If we don't collect big enough, we're gonna hold the landowners or the property owners responsible. There's so many different things that we have to do, or think about. You know, the staff consideration, everything, that I don't think it's, obviously it's not gonna get solved here.
Right.
But I think it's a work session that we need to sit down
And building size too, right? And the amount of, like you mentioned, one in Dubuque where you have a larger building with more tenants in it. I mean, at what point does that become? I mean, do we gonna have 50, 60 meters, 15, 12 meters outside with different, for each one of the different?
Well, I do
Apartments?
know that
And
the
then what-
suites is just gonna have 1 meter,
That's kind of where I was.
a large meter, and the council's gonna need to. I think Whitney was working on
Sure.
a plan for, you know, the
Determine
fixed
that
cost
rate.
and the rate for that.
I guess
That's what you need.
my suggestion would be that we,
Right.
as a work session, come up with something, a direction. And then maybe after that, we sit down with property owners teens, you know, kind of, let's come out with where we're coming from.
I would think we'd do it the other way, John, just by what I'm thinking of at least we'll have an idea going into a work session, what their expectations are versus ours, you know?
Which is fine. I think we've got their expectations, but as consumers, right, then they can come in and give us advice and then we can make decisions whether we want to make those adjustments.
I think it'd be good to have the other, what everybody else is doing, even in the bigger cities. You know, it's, and then do that work session and come out of that with something that worked for everybody.
To your question about the water meters, yeah, if you're at 50 plus, there's 50 water meters.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that people, I mean, I think moving forward, because, you know, obviously the company and want to grow. And I think that there'll definitely be people that are living, and their properties, I think it's needed in the city, I really do. But so I think that whatever, you know, we're doing right now is kind of look at that growth and what people are gonna expect when they come into the city. Because these people, a lot of these people that are, you know, gonna bring these larger units in are gonna be other places. And I think the majority of those other places are collecting their own utility. From what I gathered.
Many of you have units in communities that bill like Peosta. Are there any other communities where you have rental units that bill like Peosta does?
No. All the ones that I have, they.
I researched it, I did some research, you know, as I was reaching out to my attorney, you know, okay, is this legal? You know, why are we getting the administrative costs? You know, so we're back to the city for our administrative costs. That's what my thought was. And I started researching, it's more common to have individualized billing than it is to have the way you guys are doing.
Why we have individualized billing.
No, I mean, sit by where we get the bills,
Yeah. You know, I mean, the cost of this is not gonna cost us to be anything more than the stamp that you're gonna put on it and send it to the individual. It's the collecting of the biggest thing would be collecting of the conduit. Most of the people that I rent to welcome ACH automatic withdrawal. That's what I do. And everybody, if you had, I don't know.
We do.
You're there right now.
Yeah.
They would welcome it. And the majority of them are all going to probably be on, majority of mine are be on this. Because mine is mandatory in my building, so they're already doing it for the team. They're just gonna have to sign it on the paper.
Yeah, it'll still be a deposit issue though, because we have return checks and all return ACHs, it happens.
So to your point with the incurred labor costs, you know, so maybe there's an outside service that you guys could find to take care of that stuff for the time being. Because I think you did do it, or they do it with their dog licenses.
We're linked together though, our whole accounting package is linked together. It's not I don't think that's something we look at.
Sure, just a suggestion.
You know, and could that be a requirement, that they have to have it automatically debited from their account? I mean, right now mine are.
I don't think we could make that a requirement.
Can't.
But the other part of it though is if we collect the last business day of the month, the money's got to be there that last business day of the month. So, you know, if you have a return, I typically will reach out if I have somebody that their payment was returned on an ACH. We try to reach out to them right away because we don't want it to happen every month because it's an added $25 fee. And if they don't come in and pay it, then it's doubled that next month and stuff. So it can compound and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think they can have the option of doing it for sure, but
I don't think
the
we can
requirement, I
legally
don't think.
require it.
This to me is another one of those instances where we've got a problem to solve and we're not the first people to have this problem.
Right.
There's a lot of other examples out there that are working fine. And so we don't need to recreate a solution. We just need to go understand how other people have solved it. So what I would suggest here is that we ask the appropriate staff to consult with the other communities who are doing it. That seems to be working well. and then bring a proposal back to us of how we would restructure our process to leverage that best practice. Bring that back to us, whether it be in a work session or a meeting, but have the council come back and propose to us how we might do it differently to address what the landlords are telling us is a need. We don't have to create it. We just need to take the best of a couple other examples.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. You said you did some research. Is that research something that you have down in writing? that you-
No, I just started looking at, I just started reading cities.
Okay.
How to do it, and what I found, I did some broad internet searches, it's the smaller towns like Peosta that have this type of billing, larger towns have like Lyon or Black Hills. Which I can see from a manpower issue, you're spreading your billing over all of our AR departments versus one AR department. Well, say you one becomes two more. Well, right now, now it's I'm collecting 18 and you're collecting 19, and you're collecting 6 and you're collecting 9.
There's another way to look at it though, too. Is if a duplex or whatever, you have an apartment that has one water meter, it's no good in the house, you get the same rate, so it's all built in your price to begin with, the administration. True. You know what I'm saying?
No, correct.
It's built in, it's not like, it's not like it's costing any.
Don't you, didn't we, when we built these, we paid separate for every penalty for that.
Yes.
And then we paid it.
Yep.
There's no fee to connect.
So I think we've got our direction from here. We'll have the council do the research, or staff, I'm sorry, do the research, come back with a proposal to the council of how we might do it different to address those concerns. At that point, would one of you like to participate as a sounding board of what we come up with?
I have no problem, we have no problem, I'm sure. We have no problem.
Yeah,
Get what we come up with on the.
make sure that the solution we come up with actually solves the problem, right? Okay, so Sherry, Jeff, you guys would both be willing to do that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being patient with us tonight too.
For listening.
Thanks. All right. Next up is a second driveway request for Hill and Charlene Waterman. You must be the Watermans. Welcome. So we've, in our council packet, we've got a sketch, I presume you provided. That shows what you're intending. So you are building, when do you plan to start construction?
Over the next, whenever we get that approved.
Okay,
Start dating for the next week.
where are you moving from?
We were just on order on.
7661
Birds
Birds,
Road.
Okay,
the greenhouse on Birds Road. We're temporarily in a
Because the house was
Townhouse
like
network.
12 hours, so we're gonna get out.
on the corner
Right
of
over here on Mila.
Mila? Yeah,
Right there.
you're on the east side? Yeah, that's a really cute house.
thank you, we built it.
I've been impressed by that. All right, that's not the point of this topic, though. So we have it in front of us, even though it's not on the screen there, but yeah, what is it you're asking of the council?
Well, I talked to Dean, you know, about a month and a half ago about it, and at that time, didn't see there'd be too many issues, but see that some other issues come up. But yeah, we'd like to put a second driveway in down, kind of walk out on the south side of the house. Front of the house, faces west towards Coxwood Road there. So 2 driveways will go to Coxwood Road to the west. See, the upper driveway is gonna meet the shared driveway that's already existing. Between our lot and the lot right above us. Then another one straight out down lower. As I know, city knows. All right, the reason we're rebuilding is there's this lawn in the house in the lower level. It's just gonna curve there, and instead of wrapping a driveway around the front, up a grade, this is going out. Straight out, a lot safer for everybody, and then at the south, grade of the hill is. Don't want to old house hang like that, slope on our driveway, and it's all that good driveway. It works on straight out, safer for everybody, and it's. I don't see too big issues.
And we were an 1.5 lot also, so it's not like it's a small lot.
In the drawing, is the box, it's yellow in the version I've, it looks yellow anyways. The box that the driveway is going into, that's the garage.
Down top, if you're looking at the picture. So that is the garage, that'll be a garage there.
Okay.
That's supposed to be a garage, and that's all walked out on the side here.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So this, Dean, as we look at this, it's not lost on me, the other driveway request or topic we've got a little further down the street, where there's a second driveway, not on the front of the house, but on the back of the house. What's your thoughts on this?
So I guess at this point, that'd be my only concern that, where do we want to stand with this? I know the comment was made at the last meeting that we want to prevent too many driveways accessing Cox Springs. So, I don't see a safety issue to be a concern here of any sort. The only thing that I would see right now at this point, with the driveway that was being denied at the last meeting, the negative feedback that we're gonna get. Basically why I put this on the agenda for tonight. For a council decision support.
Need to ask a question, because I don't understand. Are these both off the front of the house?
Yeah, it would be, they would both go to Cox Control and that's. Because otherwise I'd have to wrap the driveway all the way around the front of my house and go to the other one. How's that gonna look? And then
So-
about the green space, then, and fill the concrete. It's gonna be longer to go up and around. It will be this much straight out.
So where's on this here, where is the front of the house? To the left.
So.
This is to the left. This is the front?
Bottom driveways.
Yeah, if you scroll up to the image above, I think those are oriented the same. So Cox Springs, on all of your illustrations, Cox Springs is to the left of the property.
Walkouts at the bottom.
Right, but so is the front of the house here?
That goes to the garage right above your foot.
On top, and
Right
this goes
there's the
under,
garage.
this goes under.
Walkouts, it'd be like.
So if you. It's okay. So the lot, this is the lot.
Yep.
So this is Cox
Yep,
Control right here.
yep.
So this driveway would be up here, right on the property. That's where the shared driveway
Right,
is.
this is the front of the house.
So this is the front of the house, yes.
So
What's here?
instead of taking
What's
the
here?
driveway going this way,
Yeah, well, that's top. Because this is gonna be a pretty good incline.
there's a side slope. This is.
Yeah, this is the property comes out.
This is the shared driveway down here. Okay. And
I think the difference between this and we had last one, fun last month's experience. On the hill, on the backside of the hill, we could come over. Gravel road. This is gonna be down. If I'm right, it's gonna be down towards the bottom or.
it's gonna be on the south side of the hill coming from Seton though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
they're
around.
down on the bottom where there's a lot more, you can actually see it.
Yeah, there's more visibility there.
Two different separate animals, I think.
And
But,
there's
yeah, no permit, he's asking for.
No, I get it. But I mean, I get, it's, this guy's asking for forgiveness. These guys are asking for permission.
Yeah.
Two different things.
It's not
Well-
lost on you.
And I would say.
But this is
that's
your
very-
core entrance, so this is your core driveways.
Correct.
Right, it's kind of a different animal than the other one, right?
Right.
Just to, not to compare, but
Guys, I have 2 stalls capped underneath on that. On the wall also, so there's 2 garages, not just one. So I have garages on top and now same garage underneath on that side, so. With their business being there, it's just gonna be, either way, I'm gonna have to have access down there, so I'd rather just have them straight out, I think it's gonna look a lot nicer, and there's a lot. Not having to put a concrete driveway out here around the front of the other side of my property, all here.
Both of them are gonna be cement, right?
Yes.
That's a differentiator.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, and I agree with you, but having
multiple accesses onto Cox Springs. It's kind of what we talked about when Peosta Street was being built, is having separate accesses to Peosta Street from condos, right? We didn't want to have 6 of them right there. I mean, I know this is only 2, but what happens the next one, the next one, the next one?
Difference being here too, is you got the space that we're. Driveways, they're not like right on top of each other, you're spread out.
And it won't be another drive, almost until the street guy.
You live on it?
Yeah, because that's got detention basin right there.
That waterway or whatever.
Right.
So it won't be able to drive down there to get it.
But to the north, yeah, there's gonna be some.
Well, the
Well,
next,
it's already there, we got shared driveway.
yeah, who's your neighbor to the north?
Cody?
That's just Ryan.
Oaken?
Yeah,
They own it.
and they're not building it. Not saying what happened if they're sold property in the future, but. Because that was gonna be a lockout, and they're the driveway down there, that's gonna be the driveway, shared driveway right there. And that by the time too, she says, driveway that has it, also, I thought always very equal,
But that one is a shared driveway then, so that one.
Our top one,
on.
yeah, it's a shared driveway, so we're keeping that where it's at the upper. For driveway, we're connecting into the shared driveway there, and just access to the more.
So would you be willing just, because there wouldn't be any need then for Ryan's property to have another driveway,
Unless
correct?
he builds on it or sells it, someone else.
But he could use that shared driveway, correct?
Well, is it shared or is it just drawn on here as shared? Because it's on his property, right?
Fair question. Fair question. Yeah, I guess
Dean, if I could just ask for your clarification, you had very astutely saw the potential for this to be looked at in the same, through the same lens as the other driveway. For this particular project, given the conversation we've had, what's your recommendation to the council?
Well, I guess from the last meeting, wherever we're gonna go forward with this, I mean, I think it needs to be black and white. I don't want it to be a matter of who we're best friends with in the city and allowing this to happen and not allowing this to happen. So I guess moving forward, let's make it clear in direction of how we're gonna, move forward with Cox Springs and
Even the other driveway that we talked about at the last meeting, the problem there is that they were told they should at least apply for a permit and kind of chose not to and just do their own thing. Although they did at least reach out, give them that credit, I guess. But I don't think the city code, if they applied for a permit, I'm not sure the city code would provide a lot of guidance on whether it should be granted or not. I don't know. I mean, the fact that, usually when you have plats, they show lots, and that's the one last week was a double frontage lot. There's kind of a presumption looking at that plat, well, the driveway is gonna go that way, because that's probably where the house is gonna face. But nowhere in the city code, to my knowledge, does it say you cannot have a driveway going out the back of a house to a double frontage street. So to Dean's point, that should probably be clarified. In shared driveways, shared driveways aren't always a city code thing. Two neighboring property owners can put together a shared driveway agreement and share a driveway, oftentimes on 10 or 15 feet on one, 10 or 15 on the other. But the city code could prohibit that if you wanted to. But if there's nothing in the city code that says you can't do that, then you can't. The shared driveway is throwing me a little bit because it looks like the minute it gets, and I look at, just to be sure, this is the shared driveway?
Yeah.
And it looks like if this line here is the right-of-way line, once it crosses the right-of-way line, it's not shared anymore?
Correct.
So the only thing that's shared is you're sharing the approach.
Yeah, that was a county required that, the county was doing, that was the county up until
Yeah,
Not that long ago, when I had the cottage barns, two properties to share one driveway next to each other.
they have less entrances and exits, I suppose. Yep.
And I guess that's my purpose too, right?
What's that?
Less entrances and exits.
Might be a good idea.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, okay, we're limiting it by having the shared access, but then we're undoing that by adding another driveway.
In theory. But, you know, individual driveways per houses are very common in cities and residential neighborhoods. But the shared driveway isn't as common in a city setting, especially in the Peosta, older communities where you have, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s, it's very common to have shared driveways. You know, Monticello have them all over the place, not good or bad, that's the way they did it, smaller, narrower lots. And we may have, well, under the PUD we're working on, there will be a lot of shared driveways in those neighborhoods with those smaller scale, narrower lot housing. You know, absent a shared driveway, it's not uncommon for a code to require the driveway to be at least 6 feet off a neighboring property line. In theory, if you park a car in your driveway and you want to swing your door open and get out, you're supposed to get out on your own property. You know, that's why there's some distance required. This one, obviously, just to see approach, and then you dive off into the property, so it's a little different. But so I guess long story short, I'm kind of agreeing with Dean that the code needs to be clarified on when this is and isn't permissible. I do see this is definitely different than the one last week, because one, they're asking it to, it's two frontages on the same street as opposed to one in the front, one in the back, for what it's worth. You know, Monticello, we didn't have a lot of double frontages, but where we did, we did have to address that and have, you know, specific code provisions that dealt with double frontage lots. Because you have front yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks and side yard setbacks when you build. Well, if you have a double front, one, where's your front, where's your rear? You know, a lot of things to think about.
One thing that may be a clarifier there is just to consider, what is the street address?
Yep.
And, you know, is it feasible? Is there a precedent that we could follow where the code specifies the driveway must have a curb cut on the same street as the address of the property?
Yeah,
Street address.
I think you could, and you could just say, we aren't going to allow additional curb cuts on a double street front. You could have the code say there's only going to be, you know, no greater than 24 feet of curb cut on any street frontage of lot. You know, and can you divide it into two, or does it have to be one? All those are things you could put in your code. I mean, you can say you don't want two driveways and make that clear in your code, even if it's both on the front. I mean, those are all things that could and should be spelled out. It's, you know, what the right answer is up for debate, but it's good to have that spelled out.
So as seems to be the recurring case, we have a case in front of us that needs an action. Got residents that would like to build. And we've got an ordinance that we're probably thinking we want to make some adjustments to address this ambiguity.
Kind of like your comment, development happens to Peosta, you know, it's kind of with everything happening. I mean, your ordinances become kind of quickly out of date, or maybe not out of date, but if you're smaller and not growing, the ordinances are probably fine. But as things are starting to move, and there's going to be a lot more questions, and it just needs to be ironed out. There's going to be a lot of that, I'm afraid.
It's all good stuff.
It is.
Yeah. Yep.
Are we holding you up by this decision? Is this holding you guys up? Or is that planning and zoning doing that right now?
Kind of does, I don't know, I'm gonna drive this, maybe just Steve, my lower one to have, people to have to drive up the house, which has a lot of code clients, you know, it is winter time. It's tough.
Mike and Dean, you didn't see any safety issues being down at the bottom like that?
No, I mean, maybe eventually we may have to do something about speed on that road when more houses go up in that area, especially with the new development on the other side. We may have to drop the speed, or they may shut off the road altogether in Cox Springs, join it over, you know, eventually over to the new roads over there. But with this particular issue, speeds are already at 20, people should be slowing down at that point. We have been addressing, watching the numbers come in right at that speed on that road. Now, keep in mind, there are speeds that are higher, or the average is right at that mark. So I don't see a safety concern. I'm not anticipating a lot of vehicles coming in and out of there.
One driveway or two driveways is gonna be the same amount.
Correct. I think the main issue is what Dean's saying is, you know, with the other
Yes.
residents that wanted to acquire this, how are we gonna set residents?
Yeah, and it seems like we have reason to expect we could codify this in a way that differentiates between the two, because they are different beasts. So if we were to approve this today, the council can still look for other examples of code that we could adopt that retroactively would address this issue, but it would also address it for future questions that come up.
Yeah, one thing when I look at this lot is, as it mentioned, it's an acre and a half, 180 feet wide. There's a pretty good separation between these driveways. I'm looking at an ordinance down the road, maybe that would be one consideration if there is going to be more than one driveway. So many feet between them. You can also have a green space requirement for the front yard, and which eliminates, you know, only allows so much concrete. You know, another thing to consider that might control that.
I guess one thought crossed my mind is the surface of the driveways too must be consistent.
Yep.
So you don't have one paved, one gravel.
Townhouses, condos, and everything, the difference is there.
Yeah.
Like it's spacing. Like that, okay.
You said you were planning to pave both of these, right?
I figured
So if we put that spacing requirement in, can we call that the Waterman clause?
So what did the county have for spacing between access?
I'm not sure what they had, it was just, well, I'm not bringing anything up, I saw that last night. Home lots, so, I was a storage in that there, she said, I think I had an extra interest on that because I had a green one. If you look into it, I'm like, oh, okay, it's in city owns lot now, they're on city property now, so I'm not sure.
I thought that we addressed that when we set up planning and zoning for a distance between just an access and how far from the corner or an intersection. I thought we had this stuff.
That's in there, yeah.
Um,
Distance, intersection and stuff like that. Because I remember we pulled it up, sir.
I thought we addressed all that stuff. See, I never got up to date on the new zoning laws, but I thought that we'd put all that in there. I just looked on planning and zoning, so I didn't.
So you thought what was in the zoning ordinance? I'll pull it
The
up.
distance you have to have between entrances. Access points
From stop signs.
and that are the distance between intersections from an intersection.
I don't know, in between. So it's not gonna. I mean, that's something we can look at.
So attic, conditional use permitting. Townhouses, accessory buildings. So it's not there. So I looked under entrance, I just searched by keyword for entrance and driveway. What was another term? You said intersection?
Yeah, lengths to the intersection. It's so far from an intersection for an access point.
It's a definition. Fences.
I know we addressed setbacks so far from an intersection, have 20 instead of 10. But
Well, it's nowhere, this really isn't close to an intersection.
Yeah, that's,
When it comes to
that, yeah, there's,
like that.
no, right.
Yeah, I'm finding nothing there. This is just.
My concern is just the amount of accesses to each lot.
I get it.
it may not be in there, Jim. I don't know what the finished product.
One shared.
Maybe. But it's still an extra entrance.
Council, what do we want to do with this for tonight? We've got this request to us.
I personally don't have a problem with both of them being on that lot.
I don't either.
Yeah,
I just don't like, I don't like two entrances to each lot. For the same principle we didn't like that on Peosta Street.
The only reason, yeah, would be that guide up the street, but that's a different animal, I think.
That's
there.
rear access, not front.
I agree, it's a different animal. I just don't like multiple accesses to each lot.
I don't know
Kind
what
of.
the property line thing to be. More my concern, the shared driveway idea, I don't know about that.
I can move that driveway away from the other car, that's not that big road, that moves on feet, doesn't have to be shared.
What would be your preference? A shared driveway or not shared driveway?
All I do is keep a foot in between them, they're not a shared driveway, it's just that the culverts are already there, and all the stuff's there, out there, we do all the culverts. You know, you guys can do the line and stuff.
Oh, we're actually hoping to fill that ditch in.
Yeah, so I mean.
Eliminate the culverts.
4 feet or 5 feet, it's not that big an issue at all, so. It's just that it was a shared driveway, so they more work from city, if you're doing that, then that's not really. Used to be a lot.
So your only motivation to do the shared driveway was because there was a culvert there,
It was just.
or the pipe, and it was covered. It's not even a curb cut on Cox Springs, is it?
No.
So based on what information we have, we should do something tonight. Have
Well,
something.
I mean, if you read our ordinances, we don't have anything that says we can't do it. No, we've got, again, some reason to go back and change that ordinance to restrict some things.
But at this time, there's nothing to stop. Is that right? Or is that wrong?
There's language in the code just for reference with the shared driveway. There's towards the very beginning of the zoning ordinance. To abrogate any easement agreements or, et cetera, between property owners. So the shared driveway agreement could stand, but, if that's a concern of the council and you're willing to move it, that's maybe a move.
So this is an action item. We'll need a motion to either approve or deny the request.
I make the motion to approve the second driveway request at 10496 Cox Springs Road as unless they want to move a driveway down.
With the 180 feet, I'm okay with that.
I'll second.
We have a second? Jerry?
Doug, aye.
John, no.
Jerry,
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, and appreciate the way you approached us with that. Good luck on the bill.
Thank you.
You want to talk about insurance?
Aren't you educated?
Sorry.
Just want to go home, no?
Heard a lot of it.
So do we. Next item, the employee health insurance renewal.
So, you guys had a chance at least maybe glance at it before I jump into stuff. Any questions at all?
You mean specific to insurance?
I mean, I can't really address water or curb and gutter, so we'll stick to insurance.
All right.
So really when I came and presented, it was, hey, here is the renewal and United Healthcare and Walmart. And then recommendations were, hey, can we look at some health savings accounts and or partial self-funding? Okay, so let me kind of try to break this out because there's a lot to try to grasp on partial self-funding. Hate to say they're fairly cut and dry, but basically when it comes to partial self-funding, deductible buy down, basically what we're doing is the council is going to buy a higher deductible, okay? And I'm gonna actually kind of walk through some things here. So, and I'm sure you guys can see it on there, but basically what happens is the council, or the city, excuse me, I don't know if you guys want to fund that personally, but the city would buy a higher deductible, okay? And then the city would be responsible between the difference between the deductibles, okay? So if we're on the first page, what looks like this, okay? I'll explain, okay? So in this scenario, and I'm gonna use this as an example, but I don't think it's gonna be a plan we'll move forward just based on price, okay? But what happens is you're gonna buy a deductible, okay? Under this plan, you can see the single is 3,500, where you can see proposed PSF replacement coverage, okay? That's what the city would buy, okay? 3,500 for a single, the out-of-pocket max you can see for the single is 8,150, okay? We wouldn't want to move our plan from what we currently have and have the employee all that cost, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, hey, if an employee has a gap between that single deductible above that of 500 and the out-of-pocket max of 2,000, the city's gonna cover that gap, okay? So we're taking on some risk as a city, okay? So I'm not gonna walk through every single line item here, but then below that is currently, when we got the renewal, who was on the plan? You have 2 people on a single plan and 11 people on a family plan, okay? Below that, you can see for all people on a single, if all wheels fall off, the city would take on $12,300 worth of potential cost, okay? And then you can see $135,000 in change for family, okay? Gives you the total of, roughly $147,000 in change, okay? We know not every single person that's on our plan is going to hit that maximum. It's not going to happen, okay? So we say, okay, what could happen, okay? And as I alluded to, my previous employer, we did this for about 90 to 100,000 lives across Iowa and Nebraska. Normal entities are around 8%, okay? Government entities are usually around 25, okay? I don't know why that is. It's just how the book of business ran. Typically what you see with any government related entity, they have richer benefits, okay? There's not, I don't know why the people decide they want to spend more. I can't answer that, but that's just what we saw, okay? So for that scenario, I said, let's estimate 32% of our population is going to hit that next level, okay? Which brings us to roughly about $47,000 that the city would have to pay on top of the premiums that we would buy the higher deductibles, okay? So also, what you have to do is you have to pay someone to administer this plan, okay? So you're gonna have medical associates be the primary provider, okay? We're gonna buy that higher deductible from them. The city's gonna take on that $47,000 estimate, okay? And we have to have someone to process those claims for us. Because I'm guessing that Karen and the staff here, number one, don't want the HIPAA compliance, don't want the responsibility of an employee coming in and bringing their bills and seeing that, and then also making sure that we pay people appropriately, okay? I would highly I just would not recommend having the actual staff administer the plan, okay? So we're gonna pay someone to do that, okay? Typical cost, depending on how you structure that plan, is gonna be anywhere from $5 per employee per month up to about $8, okay? So it's not a significant cost, but something that you need to factor in, okay? So then what would happen, it depends on who we select, okay? Unfortunately, medical associates does not send what's called direct feeds to any third-party administrator to process those claims, okay? So typically what would happen is the insurance company would just send automatically whoever had a claim this week to that third party, and it would be processed automatically, okay? Where if we go with medical associates on any of the plans that I'll walk through, an employee has to physically provide that information to medical associate, okay? There's a plus and a minus to that. The plus is this will not be on foot for as much, okay? Because employees will forget. And I intend to forget, they will, okay? It just will happen. Secondly, the downfall is employees are gonna have to provide more information, get it to that provider, they're gonna have more responsibility for their healthcare, okay? There's a give and take, okay? So then you can see on the very bottom for this specific plan, you can see our total cost, and that's the renewal for current total cost. That's, if we just keep everything the same, we don't make any changes, that's what we would spend, okay? Under this scenario, you can see we save about 10 grand. Does that make sense? Everything flowing? Okay, so I really think there's 2 options that I would consider, and it's the second one, okay? And here's the thing that I'm gonna go back and forth between this one and this one, okay? So The second one that you're looking at there, this is actually, under the medical associates, it's the goal number 4, that alternative. Okay. So you can see, we're saving about, $17,000 for that second alternative, okay? If we flow through all that math. Here's some of the downfalls, and we can structure it accordingly. It just gets a little bit messy, okay? And I'll explain. So under a renewal, you can see someone, if they go to the primary care physician or a specialist, it's $20. Doesn't matter, okay? And if they go get a generic drug, it's $15. And if they get any other drug, it's $45, okay? How that other plan works is they would have a $35 primary care and a $75 specialist. Okay, so our co-pays would change. And then also you can see below on the prescriptions, that would change as well, okay? There are some third-party administrators that can change co-pays, okay? Meaning we can go from a 35 to a 20, we could fund that down. It creates a little bit of confusion at the provider level because they're going to charge the employee $35. That provider's not going to know about this other plan, okay? As well as the employee's then going to have to go seek reimbursement from that third-party administrator to get recoup that that $15 between that gap. And then prescriptions gets even messier, okay? So there are some things that we would need to work through that the employee would have more ownership of their healthcare. But is that what we want? I can't answer that. I just know it would put quite a bit more burden onto the employee to do that. Otherwise, you can just say, hey, we're just going to fund the difference between the deductibles, okay? And then the employees are going to have higher co-pays. Okay? Questions on that?
Clear as mud, right?
One thing I would say, and it's not so much on that, but this goes back. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, because that could be. I don't think your employee handbook personnel policy really lays out specifically exactly the health benefits you're going to provide the employees.
Correct.
What the deductible is, what the copay is, what the going, none of that. It just kind of is what it is. You know what your policy is right now, and that's what you provide. And I know there was some talk when you still hear about updating your employee handbook and looking at that. No, to my knowledge, I don't know how far that.
I wasn't involved in that.
She said you were doing it.
What you're doing, aren't you?
Anyway, that's one of those things that even if the benefits don't change a bit, even if you leave them exactly how they are planned, that is something that should be spelled out in the employee handbook. Or an addendum to the employee handbook. These are the benefits the city provides to employees. So it's not really arguing for one or the other. That's just a side point.
I know we asked for looking into the partial self-funding aspect of this, but it looks like it's going to be a lot more.
Potentially.
I think it's potentially a good fit for us. I think on a short fuse that we have today with the renewal, I don't think we can put enough education out there to employees to make it make sense. I think that'd be my biggest thing. If this is a route to save 17 grand, right? Potentially save 17 grand or more.
Yeah, I mean, we could blow through it. It could cost us $7 grand more. We could save $50,000, right? It just all depends on that.
Right. So I think though, let's just say we were to save 20 grand. Okay. I don't think that we'd have time to put enough education in place and a systems in place to make sure that all that stuff gets handled properly. Because I think if we try to turn this around, what is this, a 7-1?
Yeah.
We try to turn this around in 2 months, it'd be a nightmare for everybody involved. Now, what I would like to do is come September, maybe let's start investigating this stuff and see if there's programs out there that have, like you said, it could be more, but I know there's programs out there that have caps that say, okay, right now it says that our premium is at $272, but at 30 or 32%, it's going to be at $262. Okay, but there's also caps on the top end of that, to where the most you're going to pay is whatever that cap is at $290 to give us that risk reward type thing. But I don't think right now, we don't have the time or the manpower to do it, I don't think.
So I'm not quite sure what you're referring to on like a guaranteed cost. It's not like a work comp guaranteed cost, like a retro or anything like that.
Right, I know there's caps though on our, that we can cap our side of it out.
I mean, there might be, and you just find another insurance product to fund it. I don't know, I'm kind of leery on it, only because this is just another insurance product that you're paying someone else for that cost. To where I'm pretty sure like you're gonna be pretty comfortable there. I do want to touch on, it is okay, where I think the potential could be to see real significant savings dollars, and it's the last option. Is that okay? And so this is a high deductible health plan, and I funded it with the health savings account, okay? And this is Wellmark, okay? So with Wellmark, we can get a TPA to get direct feeds, okay? So the employee has no responsibility besides we're gonna go to the doctor, okay? And we're gonna get an explanation of benefit from that hospital, showing that, you know, for this plan, I have a $6,900 deductible for a single, or, you know, $13,800 for family. Wellmark is going to send a feed every week to a third-party administrator, and the claims will be processed automatically. Okay, so there's not the responsibility of the employee to turn a claim. You know, if I go to the pharmacy, how am I going to work this out, co-pays, all that stuff. Okay, it's all going to be automatic. Okay, here's the biggest difference with these plans. Okay, $20 copay. The employee would be responsible for 100% of that cost, minus any discount that the insurance company provides, right? So for example, I'm on one of these plans. And I'm sure, I think Mike, you work at John Deere, and you guys are on these plans.
Yes, sir.
They can work great if you fund it and it's educated,
right,
and it's all set up properly, right? I will tell you, if we make a change now, we'll have a lot of upset people when they go to the doctor or go get their prescription, because they're going to be used to paying $15, $45. But I will tell you, if we structure it appropriately, in 2 years, they're going to thank us because of the way that we either funded their HSA or they're using that to do that. Okay, we're never going to please everyone. I can guarantee you that. But for me personally, I even have 2 little kids. I love this because for the most part, we're fairly healthy, but I know the worst case scenario is still going to be manageable. Okay, do you have any thoughts on how it works for you?
No, and your point and John's point is well taken on timing of this. If we're gonna do this, it's when we did it, you know, it's communication, and it takes a lot because it's changing your mindset of what you just said, the copay versus, you know, it's in theory another saving. It's a savings account, right? But it's to be used on healthcare expenses, and you have that there to do that. But it can work, but it is a big change. And, you know, I think the other side of this is right now, the plan we have is a very attractive employee plan, benefits wise, right? And I think that's something we need to think about as well, given your grandmother or whatever you commented last time, to weigh both of that option. But yes, to answer your question, it can work, and it has worked for myself and my family as well.
So how this would work and how I structured this is we have a $1,500 total expense for a single person. So no matter what, the most they pay is $1,500. And then for a family, I did $3,000. Okay. And then on top of that, I said the city would give every single person $1,000. Okay. So the worst case scenario for that single person is $500. That's the most that they would ever spend.
So we're funding the HSA.
On the HSA, you match, you can match the HSA or something, or, you know,
We just put
you put it in and then they can max it if they want to,
We're
right?
saving X amount of dollars, we're gonna take a portion of that savings and give it to the employees.
Right.
Correct. And then on the family.
Which
go ahead.
helps to sell it, right?
So, yeah. And then the family, I said, hey, $3,000 out-of-pocket max, but we're gonna fund their HSA $2,000. So their max, the most of those spend is $1,000. So if you compare that to their current, for a single person, they could be on the hook for $2,000, for a family, it could be $4,000. So we cut their exposure drastically, but again, we got to get that mindset of how do we shift it away from I'm used to paying $20 to now I might have to pay $112 to go to the doctor. Okay, that's where you're going to see your hurdle. It's not going to be the hospital. It's not going to be that.
But I think if we start with education in, I mean, pick your month ahead of time and have employee meetings and going over and over, takes the fear and the panic out of someone
Right.
who goes to the doctors, oh my God, I gotta pay $120 for this
What do you
office.
mean?
I agree.
Where's the $20?
Yes.
Well, we just funded you $1,000 into it the first year. You know what I mean? And it would be an education.
Well, that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to start with it's funded, right? You've got something to pull from, so it's not a, you know. But,
Yeah, and I will say, I think education is good. But what I historically saw, and again, I just did it for a company where they didn't charge us for that down. Okay, I only have one employer that did that, and that was them. And we warned them. We had 4 different meetings. Hey, healthcare costs are going up. Don't be surprised if you see this. We had our meeting and it was, what? Healthcare costs are going up? I had no idea. So I think education is good, but we're still gonna have to have that. And I think it's gonna be a trickle. Hey, September, January, March, right? So that way they really know this could potentially be coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about making sure they know it's not a, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if this was to work out, they're no worse off because we're giving them the difference.
Yeah.
Basically, right?
And really, they can use that $500 or $1,000, whatever the council decides to give them for that doctor visit, that prescription, right?
It goes into it just deposited directly into the HSA.
right.
It's their account.
Right.
The city has no control over it, besides, hopefully they would do direct deposit into it if someone decides, I want to put $50 a week.
Right. And so that's one of the things that, as you probably imagine, I'm on the high deductible health plan like Mike. And you can choose how much you want to fund into it. And if what you fund into it is less than what you pay out of it, because you get a little debit card, it's easy to pay.
Right.
Account. But that balance grows over time.
Exactly.
And it accumulates year over year over year. And if you leave, it goes with you. That's your money.
Right.
Regardless of your employment with the city. So it's tax deferred.
Would that replace flex spending?
Yes. Yes.
Could.
Could.
That wouldn't have to.
But you don't lose.
But it'd be more beneficial.
But
Yes.
Don't lose.
Right.
Our,
Yes.
my HSA, we can use the HSA to pay contacts. We can use it to pay dental. Yeah. We pay all of our, anything close to medical. If we buy a box of Band-Aids.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Depends on.
Yeah.
A big
That's an extreme. But it's not just doctor visits that you pay it.
Yeah.
So I'm in the same camp. I really like ours because I feel like I see all the expense and I've got some control over the expense. But whatever we do as a family that we don't use at all, we get the incremental benefit. And it accumulates year over year over year over year.
what I think this also does is help the end user be good consumers of the plan.
Yes, it has changed my behavior for the better.
Water bill discussion. If you're getting your own water bill, it's gonna impact your behavior.
So I think we like this idea-ish, but just not today. Is that fair to say?
That's where I'm at. Now, it really.
I would say as an employee, that's something I have been interested in is a health savings account. As we get older, it's great when you're young because you can build. We could invest more, because we're kind of at that point in our lives, but it's gonna stay with us. So I view it as a positive as well. And then you have that, your maximum caps. So if you do have something catastrophic, you're still covered by that insurance. But I don't have any kids at home or on my plan either, so that's coming from.
Yeah, but I'm curious for Dean or Mike, your awareness or first impression of it.
I actually have more interest in this plan versus the one we are initially on at this point in time. Especially considering, like I say, it's easier to manage. It appears to me it'd be easier to manage versus flex spending from year to year.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. That's what, if you have additional money in there, it's beneficial to you to the next. Because eventually there's gonna come a day when you're gonna need it. So, to me, it's a benefit. And once that money's gone, you're not gonna see it, but it's in that account for.
think a big thing is education with all the other employees. I mean, the way he's explaining it now, I get it too. I like it. I don't know how the other employees are gonna react to it, but I think it could be a great thing too. I don't know.
Do it.
I definitely don't think you want to mix. I kind of brought up to some of you that, I had a really good experience with partial self-funding. The city saved a bunch of money. You definitely don't want to go any route where the employees gotta physically manage getting the EOB to the administrator. That would be a disaster. I mean, you don't want to try to save money by hoping employees forget to turn them in. That's just not good. So I think any plan you would go with down the road would have to be a plan that had those EOBs going automatically to whatever third-party administrator might be involved. So.
Yeah,
It was a shock when we changed.
And there was a lot of education.
And there was a ton of education, but it still was a shock, and that's what we need to think through. I mean, we joke, our oldest child was a $20 copay baby.
Good old John Deere.
Okay, our youngest child was not a $20 copay baby, okay? Right, but that's kind of what it's that mindset. The plan that is there today is pretty impressive and almost unheard of, right? I mean, that's the other side of it now, but as long as it's, weighing it from definitely your guys' standpoint, right? What is a good look and what is a good thing for the future, right? So anyway.
If we pay close attention to what's the maximum exposure, right? That's important. Convenience.
Yes.
And the upside potential, if you don't fully use the coverage.
Right.
Where does that money go? Does that go to the healthcare or the insurance company or some underwriter, or does the employee get to keep that benefit?
Yep.
Do you know what the city of Dubuque has? Is it this plan?
So how is the copay determined?
There is
no copay.
There is no copay.
You pay it.
You pay regardless.
What you pay though is.
But it's an agreed upon rate.
It's a negotiated rate. The insurance company negotiates a rate. So when I go for like a regular doctor's visit for something, whatever it is, the rate the doctor charges me has been negotiated with the insurance company. So I'm not paying a cash price for that service. I'm paying the negotiated price and I pay with my HSA account.
Yeah.
And do you know that up front?
Yes.
I know what up front.
Prior to the visit?
I know what.
What the cost is gonna be?
Oh.
The cost per visit?
No.
No.
You just know you're gonna.
No idea.
Well,
I don't know if you could by asking. I would think.
Okay.
So here's one of the things that I have to be careful because we represent a lot of hospitals, but here's one thing that kind of drives me nuts is it's the only thing that you go by that you don't know the cost of before.
Yeah.
The only thing, think of it, besides, maybe, how much a pipe is gonna cost you, before you approve it.
Wow, we're listening.
So that's the thing that, is the hard thing, but being a good consumer sometimes is asking those questions. And I think for the most part, if you ask, they'll be able to tell you to a certain extent. The hardest thing is you say, well, I want to go in for, whatever, I have a flu, right? Well, then all of a sudden it's like, well, we kind of got this and this and this, we got to do some blood work. Well, you thought the flu copay, was going to be $110. Then they did blood work, so that was another $210. That's the hardest thing, right? Because we don't know what we're going to get until we actually get all the care received. But I can tell you personally, and again, this is where I live, and it's probably not too far off from here, but if I take my kids to the doctor, it's like $92. Total cost. So then I use my HSA to help pay for that. But that whole $92 goes towards your deductible. Does that make sense? The biggest thing, it's not, I can tell you, it will not be doctor visits. The biggest thing is going to be prescriptions. Because if someone is used to paying a $45 copay, and let's say they're taking a $700 drug, and all of a sudden they go to the pharmacy and it's $700, and they got to fund that right then and there versus $45, that's where they're going to have the biggest heartburn. And I can help them educate because there's software out there that you can plug in your drug and you can see what it costs. And if you call a pharmacy and say, hey, I take XYZ drug and we're gonna go with Wellmark, tell me what the cost is, they won't be able to tell you because they'll have to run it through their system. It's just silly kind of, I don't know, a loophole, I'll call it, but yeah, I'm not concerned about the physician visits, it's the farms.
So I think for tonight, what I think I'm hearing from the discussion here is that we think there's some opportunity and at least a curiosity to see what a high deductible health plan might look like and work for, how it might work for the staff at the city. But we're not ready to jump into it with both feet quite yet. So we have a renewal that we need to do. And I think I'm hearing an appetite to renew as is for now. And then plan to actually have in-depth analysis, development work to see what a high deductible health plan would look like. And then we can consider implementing it next year at this time.
Yep.
I'll make a motion for renewal.
A second.
And I.
Mike,
Motion carries with 5.
thanks for the work on this.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you very much. You led that well. All right. If we didn't have enough insurance discussion, let's talk about workman's comp.
Hopefully this one will be a little bit easier. So on the proposal on page 3 of 9, walks through the premiums, the rates, and I did some analysis, a couple things that I want to mention. You can see, we're jumping from, basically 18,000 to 21,000, which seems like quite a bit of a jump. But we have to also factor in, we increased our payrolls. Okay, so if we take the same payrolls from 2020, put those into 2021 rates, we truly only took a 480 cent. So most of the increase is due to the increase in payroll. Okay, so quickly for work comp, how it's rated is every $100 of payroll has a rate. So for example, the waterworks, you can see for 2021, that rate is $3.53. So every $100 of payroll, that's what we pay is $3.53. Okay. Couple of things also to note that I think it's important is our experience mod. Okay. And again, 1 is average. Anything above 1, we're getting dinged, meaning 20, I think this year's 21%. Okay, so they're tacking on an additional 21%. Anything below 1, we're getting a discount. Okay, so if it was at 0.9, we'd get a 10% discount. Okay, so again, when we have a high experience mod, that impacts how our premiums are paid for the city. And that's 100% based off of our payrolls and claims that we've had. Okay.
Is it like a rolling claim?
Yep.
Are we looking like it's going to be better next year? Are we getting rid of early bad year?
Great question. You segued me perfectly. So we're going to be dropping off about $21,000 in claims. And as of today, we haven't had any claims in the current period. And that for next year will drop off $21,000 in claims and that on 0. Okay, hopefully 0. Okay, so that should drop our experience mod. It actually should drop it below 1.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask is magnitude.
Should, and I can do calculations, beforehand. And in fact, usually I work with Karen during budget time to actually calculate that and what to expect from us at budget. Questions on the work comp?
So we're renewing it, right? That's what the action is to us,
Correct.
and we're renewing it for 2022.
21 to 22.
Yeah, this is July 1st.
Where's 2022 premium? Am I?
So this is for 2021/2022.
It looks a little different than your fiscal years I'm used to looking at that cities use.
They label it by the first year, not the second year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up at the top, Jim. There's a policy.
Thank you.
Term 7-1.
No, I just kept seeing the 2021. I was looking for.
No, it's a good call. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and remove the workman's comp renewal.
I'll second. Mike, aye.
I'm sorry.
I did
totally
hear
missed
it.
it. John,
Don, second. I second. You bet.
and all eyes.
Yep.
all ayes. Motion carries with 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you sticking around.
Yeah.
Nice prep work for the discussion.
I enjoyed the pipe comment was the best part.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
We're good night.
So what do we need to do to make sure we start this conversation about the 2022 plan? Or whatever number we put on that, the next year's plan, early
I
enough.
have no here for September, and actually, I was looking at the agenda, draft agenda started. So I was hoping to go out the next at least quarter, so September work session is gonna include a discussion on the employee health insurance.
Right.
That's okay.
Perfect. Should we invite him
Oh, absolutely.
and actually give him pre-work to say, bring us a high deductible health plan proposal like what he did today?
Yeah, and some examples. Right, like the description, like the,
Yeah.
you're probably gonna you're gonna go to the doctor and you're probably gonna get a bill versus paying when you go to the doctor. There's this, it's really a kind of a paradigm shift.
So you don't pay when you go?
No,
Can't pay when you go?
I haven't tried.
That's the thing, it's a paradigm shift, Dean, that's the thing, I just go when you leave, and then there's this, they go this back and forth, negotiate rates, and then they send you what you owe. And then you get statements from your provider that says, here was what they charged, here's what we deducted, here's what you pay.
You'll be.
This is what you owe, and then the bill comes.
Because depending on your visit, one thing led to another. Like,
Exactly.
For example, right now, you have 1 free physical per year.
Yep, and we still get, yep.
You ask your family doctor anything other than what that physical pertains to, you're getting billed.
You're getting a bill. Well, it depends on what they.
I found that out the hard way.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Not the hard way, but I all of a sudden received a $20 copay bill in the mail, which I completely reamed them on because I said, there's no way.
It's a change order.
And then they explained it to me and I'm like, well, for sure. That's why she was digging into whether there was any other problems or not.
But that's some of the things I think, Jim, that bringing some examples,
Education, it's the education.
Which would make sense.
If the EOB comes, I just get on it, you call the number on the bill, I pay it over the phone, just read them the card number is my preference.
Yep.
Or if they have a guest account, you can log in online and pay it that way, it's easy.
Yep.
I don't like creating user IDs just for that.
So is there ever a cap on the prescriptions? It's like Mike was saying, Zach's,
It's your,
there is.
it's your,
you deductible.
it's your deductible.
Once you get your deductible, then it's paid.
So you could use your whole
Yeah.
HSA to meet your deductible.
Right.
So
then you're back to your
if it was a
$500
$700 prescription and you had a $1,000 deductible, the first month is $700, the next month is $300. Then your insurance kicks in. You might have to pay a percentage.
And then you got your $500 deductible technically then, because you've used your $1,000, the city.
Deal this on something.
Your $500 deductible.
Deal with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for a lot, the people, it wouldn't be anything special, it would be people maybe with a chronic condition or the medications where they're gonna just keep that up.
And that's where,
Budget for that.
that's where they need to budget for it to make sure that the gap that's left after the city contribution and the gap between it and
And
the
the
maximum, that gap, they have to just plan for with paychecks to fill that gap. And some people need to do that aggressively early in the year to get it that first year. But once you get a year or two of, down the road, the max you're gonna pay out of it, you can overfund it so that the beginning of the next year, there is no gap.
Sorry.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it, but we have the action and we'll make sure. All right, City Hall remodel. Doug, you put some clarifying things in here about musts with the procedurally, how we might go about this.
Yeah, this was discussion, email, kind of head back and forth. The question was, in the event there would be renovations to this facility, could city staff, basically, or city council hire somebody to come in and do it? Or would you need engineered plans? We need to go out to bid. So I put in here the relevant provisions of chapter 26 of the Iowa Code regarding public improvements. And basically, the only way you avoid going out to bid largely is if it falls under repair and maintenance work, which is the preservation of a building, including minor replacements and additions to restore the public facility or structure to the original condition with the same design. And clearly, anything we do here is going to have a different design. Then there's bid thresholds and cost amounts. This is horizontal infrastructure. I'm sorry, vertical infrastructure. because it goes up, if you will, as opposed to a road or a bridge. So I think you're stuck with having stamped engineered design plans and going out to bid if you're gonna do a significant project here. So you're moving walls and changing workspaces.
I think there's a general acceptance that the current space is not tenable for the long term.
Or the short term.
Or the short term. I think there's more info that we need to figure out whether we want to stay here or to make a different home. Or how long we choose to stay here. Because a different home, we've already looked around locally, there's nothing readily available. So whatever we do is gonna be new construction. Whether it be at the city's direction or somebody else's. So we have to figure out how to make this that lead time. One piece of information we don't yet have that I think would be helpful for this discussion is to know if we vacate this space, what revenue could be generated for the city from its next best use. So on this particular one, I find myself leaning towards, as much as we want to do something on this right now, I would like to have that piece of information of, and I think the right place to get that might be our, what was formerly known as the PCC committee board.
So what are you're looking for, how much we can rent the space for?
Yeah. Who would be a
So
likely candidate and what revenue?
I guess, are we talking about, before we decide if we want to even renovate this? Because right now, if we don't renovate this, it's minimum 3 or 4 room space.
I disagree with that. I've said this 2 meetings and it's fell on deaf ears. I'd like to have a cost what's gonna add on to the community center in that green area. This is 7 panels wide, which are about 8 foot. And the green space area is 9 panels wide.
Okay.
When I look at this, this meets our needs, but then at the same time, it takes space away from Stacy. She uses this room for things. And if we build that over there and we vacate this and we move over there, then when we build a new facility, 10, whenever, this whole area up here could be gutted to however Stacy wants it for more room. And then she could put her offices, if she wanted to, over there, and then her offices downstairs could be, that room could turn into something else. And at the same time, if we move over there, she could move her offices up here and still turn that in. So she's gaining more room and we're gaining more room. And if we renovate this, ever since I've been on the council, the number one big concern is space for the staff. Okay, we do this, we're gonna gain space. Option 2 or downfall 2 is we're gonna take room away from Stacy. Downfall 3, we have done nothing to deal with the noise over here. If we're over there, there's no basement. It's gonna be quieter. Music ain't gonna come up through the floors.
I would like to see the cost of renovating this. I'd like to see the cost of that.
Yeah.
So how do we go about getting the cost estimate on that? You have any ideas on that, Doug?
That'd be Dean's deal.
Poor Dean.
I mean, legally, in that Dean or staff or somebody, you can talk to a contractor if you can find one willing to work with you to put kind of a rough estimate together.
But it's still gonna have to be engineered.
If that sounds like a really positive approach, then you're gonna get an engineer.
Yeah, they'd get down for it.
I guess, for me, I'm tired of kicking the can down the road.
I am too.
And if you found a contractor, this is the difficult part because they know that it's gonna be a publicly bid project, so they may be, I mean, you could hire a contractor, do it that way. We're gonna pay you to come in and look at this and put together kind of your cost estimate for us. You're not gonna be able to use that for any purpose other than to help you make a decision. You know, as far as how far you want to explore this project or that project, but at least it might give you an idea if he says, well, cost option here is, you know, $125,000. Cost option down there is $200,000. But you're like, well, but that gives us a lot more space, gets us away from the noise, does a lot of other things. You know,
But if it's-
75,000, it's way worth it.
But if it's 750,000 and 100 a quarter, then it's different.
Yes.
Revenue, like.
But I'm saying, I mean, it gives us information. Right now, we don't have any information to make any decisions.
Yeah, but you might not,
But at the same time, John, if we don't do that, just say 700,000, do
Remember?
this is 200,000, do this. We build something, whatever, 10 years, 15 years down the road, they're gonna come in, whatever we did here, they're gonna get all this. So all the money we spent is wasted.
Ish,
Give George a call and have him use the.
right? I mean, it's still usable space.
That'll take care of that.
Well, not by the plan here, it's all offices, you know what I'm saying?
I can talk to him.
But it's not wasted because we're still using it.
Together.
Right, but they're gonna have to cut everything we put into it.
But either way, we need information.
Right.
Right now, we're guessing.
Could we do it for both, are you saying? Have him do it for both,
you could,
have George do it for both?
I don't see why not.
I mean, there's probably a rough number.
I mean, he may small,
In charge of
small,
stations.
some of the.
In this case, it's unique because 2 walls are done.
Yeah,
He only has to put 2
well, he
in a
put the
row.
building up, so he knows exactly what's going on with it, so.
Our workshop, if I did my math right, is 9 days away. Did we get an estimate by then?
But, why do that?
9
I'm
days?
sorry, but our workshop is 9 days away. Think we can get at least a ballpark idea from him by then?
I'd be able to get a ballpark.
I gotta believe it's gonna be high, especially material costs being the way they are.
I'm sure it is.
And let's be clear, we're asking him to shell it, right? Just put a roof.
Is that all you're looking for? Is the
Walls, well, that's what I'm asking, I guess.
No walls, no room?
No, I think let's out the door.
Complete.
Tax title and license.
Yep.
Well, we can have that
They
in
can buy a car.
You could probably.
Maybe 2 months.
Number for
Yes, then we just.
square foot interior finish is gonna cost. The other
Right.
numbers out there somewhere.
Right.
All right.
All right.
I mean, is there anything else to consider like that, or that's kind of the two things right now? There's nothing else, right?
Can you guys give me a general idea of what you want for offices,
In here?
like amounts?
Well,
So you want that in both places?
Well, that end can be bigger than that, right?
Right.
Like the conference area, whatever, this area could be bigger, but yeah, that.
Same kind.
Ish. That's the concept. That's, yeah.
You're looking at a council chamber.
Yeah, it's up.
Sean did it.
Kelly.
No.
Kelly did it.
Could Kelly just draw something up? with some-
Well, I think we can just use that as.
Well,
Sorry.
I drew the outline.
Yeah.
I came in and measured and just drew the outline, the interior work.
To your mind, if you went out that way, that the council chambers would be part of that as opposed to using the banquet room.
And would it also be that we would have access to the building? Or would that be its own single?
No, you'd have even this one here, you'd have to put another door in.
Right.
Storage unit
But
is.
I mean, over.
Over there, you still have access out to the track, just like kids, or whatever it is.
We probably could just use the restrooms.
That's what I was asking. There wouldn't be any new restrooms or plumbing.
That's expensive.
Over there, there's probably one. With what? No heating in there
Well, yeah,
and
you put us a
restrooms.
sink in the thing and we'll be fine.
We went down that direction once already, Karen.
All right, well, I think
Where'd that get you?
I heard a direction to get some estimates for renovating here versus adding 2 walls and roof over there and building new over there. If we're gonna do that, I still think there's value in us getting an opinion on what this 2,000 square feet can get. We know there's already revenue coming from council chambers, that if we renovate here, we're gonna go down that. Right?
Get a daycare to take this area. Oh,
That's
God, that would-
daycare.
that would
That's-
take care of everything.
And that's what I'm hoping that they'll explore a little further, is consider what this would look like if it was 2,000 square feet of daycare. It fills a city need, it generates revenue, you know, and another, I mean, there's other organizations that might have an interest in having this 2,000 square.
10,000 is really small for a daycare.
2,000?
Cause you'd have to have bathrooms here probably.
Yep, but you have to have so much space per kid, only so many kids. per kid.
That one's not.
But yeah, I know in Monticello, we're looking at a new daycare in town at 3,800, so a little bigger. It was being sized at like 10,000 square feet. But, I mean, now if somebody wanted to do just a baby or 2-year-old daycare, I mean, that's where the big demand is, because a lot of people, if you have infants to whatever the age is, the ratio is like one teacher or one person to 4 maybe or something, or if they're 2 to 4 years old, then you can have 8 or 10 of them.
Yeah, we should do.
So you can make a lot more money with older kids. So
Give
there tends to be a need for the real little kids.
Give NICC a call, see if we can piggyback off their program, maybe put a portion of it in here. Bigger kids over there.
That's what I'm looking to our PCC board, rebranded as advocacy group for the PCC, to do that research. Yep. Perfect. And they may come back and tell us there isn't any. And that could be formative in our decision as well, if we realize there is no other next best use for this space. And that would probably influence our thinking too. Storage. All right. Cops.
Yeah, so.
Hiring program.
Yeah, I sent you guys an email last week. I don't remember exactly when, I had this information about this cop grant. With the city getting bigger, brag, looking to add police officers to the city. I saw this and I thought this would be a great opportunity to take advantage of this grant if possible, if you guys decide to do so. So I'm asking, I guess, for a discussion and or give me some guidance of what to, or how to move forward with this. Just kind of give you some highlights with this grant. Basically, what it is it awards a police officer, if we were to hire a police officer, this grant for 3 years would award 75% of an entry-level salary and fringe benefits for each approved position for a 3-year period. So which means the city would only pay for 25% for 3 years. After the 3 years, then the city would take on the full pay of, after, the city would just have to adjust to try to figure out how to pay the full 100% of an added position. The reason I'm coming to you is it's due June 15th, the grant is, so we got some time yet. We have up to 60 months to utilize this grant, which is 5 years. It sounds like we have up to 5 years to utilize this grant for recruitment or hiring. Entry level salary, okay, I did that one. The one thing, I guess, with this, it would start October 1st, whatever, and it pays up to $125,000 each year for 3 years. So that would, I believe, Karen, we didn't do the math yet, but that would cover the cost with the fringe benefits of an added position. Now, I know within 5 years, and this is the one thing I'm coming to you on, 1 would be great, 2 would be better as police officers in the next 5 years. I think we're going to need that within the next 5 years with the growth and expansion. I guess I'm asking, do we just go for 1 or possibly 2 and see if we get that and we can utilize this? If we do get 2 officers with this, we can use this within the next 5 years. Moving forward, I'm sorry.
What happens if we apply for 2, whatever, we go down 3 years down, or we hire 1, 3 years down the road, we say, we're good?
Yep.
With just the 1?
Yep. We just lose that portion of the grant. We wouldn't get the money for it,
So it's a.
So to me, it's a no-brainer to apply for 2. And if we get 1, great. If we get 2, even better. If we don't decide to go down that road, then we just don't get that money. But I guarantee within the next 5 years, we're probably going to get another officer. You know what I'm saying? As in this
Seems like a no-brainer.
But it's common.
Whether we hire no one or not, or 2.
You know what I'm saying? It's common regardless.
Right?
They're probably, in talking with the chief, and I think he's right, this is a pretty specialized grant. You're going to be more likely to be successful if you have somebody put it together who's put these together before.
So that's my next piece
You
here.
spend a little money on a grant, probably, but.
So it is a complex grant. A lot of other cities that are doing this are hiring out a consultant to put the grant together. I was advised, don't do it yourself, hire somebody to do it, because that's how complex it is. I did find a guy by the name of Steve Meyer Consulting. He's out of Garrison, Iowa. He's the fire chief of Garrison, Iowa. He also does grants for a living. He actually writes
all the grants for Peosta City Fire Department, whenever they need grants. So he has the end, he knows about the city already. He knew a lot more about this, obviously, than he would about any other city, just because he wrote those grants. Basically, when I was talking with him today, he was telling me the fee would be roughly about $1,500, no more than $2,000 to write the grant, to help write the grant. I personally, I think it's worth it in the overall scheme of it. If we're looking to add additional officers, this could be a great way to pay for it.
Its current percentage of grants granted.
He said, no, right, that's a good question. It is. He did tell me that he does grants for fire departments, ambulance, emergency management agencies. Basically, he has a bunch of them. I don't know the percentage, but he says he gets a lot of them granted. Now, he can't guarantee anything on this.
No,
because,
but
it's out of 100, let me look here. I believe it's out of 13 state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies trying to hire more than 134 officers. So I mean, you're looking at quite a few police departments you're going up against. But one thing he did hit on was what he looks at when he writes this grant. He states that, the need of it with the size of the community, how it's growing, and how the city is able to fund it, as in, our city is small, it's hard to fund the police officers, but as the community grows, the expansions, that will help, but that's where this grant is in good use. He thinks we would be a good, it'd be a good outcome possibly for us if we didn't pursue this. He was fairly confident. But again, no grants guaranteed.
If we pay him $3,000, will they make sure our score's better than everybody?
Right.
But maybe we can follow up with the Peosta chief, fire chief. How did, of the ones he's written, did they get them?
Right.
Right, that'd be.
Right, no, right. And he says he does get them. I don't know the percentage. I guess what I'm looking at tonight is to move forward possibly, we have time, but not a lot of time, because this is June 5th. I'm not saying we want it now, but now.
Has he done this grant before,
Yes, he's done 15 grant, or not 15, I'm sorry. He's done quite a few grants, cop grants before, and he says he has had success with them. He didn't tell me exactly what the percentage was, but he has written these before. He's very familiar with them, and he has had success with them.
Is there a second choice you're considering to do the grant writing?
As of right now, I mean, possibly another choice, possibly coming up that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Sounds like this guy's an island, like he knows what he's
So
doing.
you have to pay and then you get reimbursed? Is that how that works?
Trying to remember, because we did this in Monticello 2 years back.
And I don't know, maybe it doesn't change anything. It just,
We just change cash flow.
it would change how it comes and goes, but.
It's definitely, big picture. If you were of a mind that you were going to need to hire an officer, or maybe
It's the thing.
there's no reason, if it's 2,000 to get the grant put together, that's probably good money spent.
What, if I may ask a dumb question, what's your spending authority?
I'm sorry.
What's your spending authority as a chief?
I believe $1,000.
1,000, so this is above your spending authority.
That's why I'm coming to you guys.
Okay, it's a good gesture, right? I appreciate that you would do it just for that, but,
I think it's a no-brainer.
and this is well within the city administrator's spending authority. So this really doesn't need a council action.
Good
It's
input.
hiring staff though.
I'm sorry?
But is some of the action,
Is it one or two? Yeah.
is it one or two? You go for 2 officers or 1? Is that some of the discussion?
I think it's 2, because if you don't get the
And
2,
maybe I can talk to the consultant about this also.
You don't get to
and say,
do-
what's our best options?
you're just out the grant.
Yeah, but if you go for 2, does it hurt your chances?
It's just for the complete application.
Gonna leave that maybe a decision based on the kind of question I need as a discussion between the chief and the grant writer. Is there any
Fair.
negative
Yep.
asking?
Yep.
Okay.
Since this isn't on the agenda for action specifically, if you are all kind of consenting that sounds like a good road to go,
Well, it's on
it's
there,
in my discretion to do it, I can authorize him to do it.
it's on there for action.
It is on there for action,
Action/discussion.
Okay,
but I'm questioning the need for action, just administratively, if this is within your spending authority.
And the comment on the grant writing, I know we applied for a lot of grants back home in the fire department. And it seems like after a person's doing it, their name gets well known, brand world with the fire department, police department, so they kind of look at them more.
So we need action?
You can if you want.
I agree with Jim, it's in the,
Run with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not hearing any contrary opinion.
You have approval.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thanks for the email, though.
Yes,
That was really,
Well, I mean, it's one of those things I wanted to give you the information, kind
That was
of,
great.
wanted to look into it. I can kind of explain, I know it's kind of a lot in that email of what it's about, but I think it's a great opportunity to explore anyway.
yep. Appreciate it.
No, good catch. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
9, isn't it?
I have no idea.
When's Dairy Queen close? I got my delivery.
All right, so next up is resolution of support for Peosta Square
Big
workforce
boy, you're
housing
really
tax
cold.
credits.
I put together this resolution today. I didn't give it to you guys because I talked to Wes about it, wanted to review it with him to be sure I was, meeting what he needed. After we started talking, he needs a specific number in the resolution as far as what the city is committing, if you will. And it doesn't mean that that's the exact number down the road, but basically we need to have a development agreement approved with him to arrive at a number, to plug the number in this resolution. The resolution I looked at for Manchester was a little bit simpler, and I went back and forth a bit. I said, well, I know you were talking with Whitney about a development agreement that would provide these incentives. And we can figure out the value of those incentives that you've been talking to Whitney about based on the property, and come up with a number in the resolution that say the city's negotiating a development agreement, and subject to approval of the council, the benefits to be derived from the development agreement will total X. He wasn't satisfied that that would be definite enough for his application. He'd like it more definite. He's got some time, so he asked that we delay this and get going on the development agreement side. So Karen's got that on the schedule, this June 8th meeting, to schedule a public hearing for the next meeting. So I will work with him on a draft about, well, actually, I'm gonna talk to Dorsey and Whitney, I guess that's who's been doing them for the city, so. Yes. Yep. And yeah, so I'll follow up on that and get that moving. There's a whole bunch of development agreements that need to be worked on right now. Brewery, coffee shop, CrossFit. Yeah, so anyway, that's the scoop on this tonight. No action is required based on my discussion with us.
Perfect. All right, then we will move on without action on that item. Moving to the resolution approving the plat of survey lots 1-74 and 2-74 of Thunder Valley Estates. We talked about this one before. This is quite simply splitting a piece of property into two.
Splitting the condo.
Split the condo.
0 lot line.
I'll make a motion for a resolution approving plot survey of lot 174, 274.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Aaron, I.
John, I.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion carries with 5. And then there's the Outrun the Rays street closure request.
So I got a call today about that run. Sounds like they do this as the 10th annual. It sounds like it's just a great proceeds. 100% proceeds go back to local communities. Basically, they're asking for permission to possibly for some road closures while the run's in place. They're expecting 500 runners to run the streets. I am working with them on, please with this, closing the streets and just being here for that run. So my recommendation is to approve it going forth today. But being said, in good faith going forward, if you guys, I guess I recommend me as a police chief and the council for approval for any and all permits coming forward that regard parades, fun runs, any kind of street closures. Because, and even as of right now, anybody can come in without a permit and do a run without, because I didn't even get notified till today, which I was kind of upset by. So that 500 people are coming this week and I got to juggle to try to help the situation, make sure everything goes smooth.
So we don't have something in place here that has.
No, there's no permitting, and that's what I was working with Karen today a little bit on. We're trying to get some permits in place for this, as in they have to come to me to get approval for this, to make sure if they're gonna shut down some streets. And then normally what happens is if it goes to a council decision just to approve it with my recommendation.
Yeah. So if I get a group of people and just go stand in the street, isn't there something against that?
As in, well, you can't just stand on the street, but.
Okay, we go run down Peosta Street, traffic can't get.
So normally you get permits for it is what.
We don't have anything that requires that.
As far as I know, no.
No.
As far as road closures, right?
Oh, interesting.
It's different.
Why don't you take Leslie Drive out of there? Every run goes past our place.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good loop.
Yeah.
That's surprising because this is not, like it says, this has been going on Memorial.
Yeah, and I wasn't here, obviously COVID last year, I wasn't here for the prior because I wasn't here yet for that.
I've learned frankly, we.
But I don't know if police departments were ever notified.
Called in today. Asked me.
Yeah.
Didn't even
Yeah,
remember.
so it caught me off guard that 500 people are coming here to run on the streets and basically these roads for about an hour in the morning on Saturday,
So how do we as a city communicate that? Because
like I said, with the permits in place, we can put them on.
no, not even, okay, that's part of it. But if we're not aware, how do we get news, kind of that stuff out to people? I mean, can we blast that out in a text or something?
We saw something on Facebook there, right?
Yeah,
Okay, you put it out on Facebook?
but
Yep.
again, it caught us off guard.
Sure.
So we need to set up a system to where they have to come get a permit.
Correct, and then it have to be through me and the recommendation that you guys, either we go through with it or not.
So we're able to support it this year.
Yes,
We have everything.
I'm working with him on it. I told him I would work with it. He was gonna come tonight, but I told him, don't worry about it. I will work with him and make this work.
And we will need a follow-up at some point to change our requirements.
Again, this is coming into the ordinance where, it changes the ordinance, maybe a good look at what Doug was saying earlier.
Okay.
Motion for this week?
Yes.
I'll make a motion for road closure for the, I'll run the race.
Second, Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John,
Okay.
Motion carries with 5. Not aware of anything for the other section on that, so we will move right to the ending. Citizen comment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Megan, ask online. Anybody online care to address the council before we adjourn? All right, hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. 3 hours.
Just under 3 hours.
Less than that. Yeah.